Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting, Monday, November 13th, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:31. We're a minute late starting. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here. Now, Mr. Peter Wright, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
If you please stand with your right hand over your heart and ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this point this evening, we will do some proclamations and presentations. I have a couple of proclamations that we'll go through. First, we have one for the Solvang Theater Fest. Now, this was interesting. They had a presentation a little while back. I had the opportunity to read this to those that were there. I want to read this for the entire city. So this Theater Fest proclamation. Whereas the Solvang community leaders envisioned a theater as a venue for summer theater, concerts, and other programming arts that would enrich the cultural life of the San Ynez Valley. And whereas the Solvang Business Association and the Solvang Santa Ynez Valley Arts Association selected a site, developed the plans, received county approval, raised the funds to build the Solvang Festival Theater on 2nd Street. And whereas on June 11th, 1974, construction began on the unique pole barn type design, with the architect and contractors directing local workers and subcontractors who generously contributed much of the labor and materials while working scores of hours to ready the theater to open in 58 days for the opening of Once Upon a Mattress, August 7th, 1974. And whereas the Solvang Festival Theater, under the ownership of the Solvang Festival Theater Fest Board of Directors, has welcomed more than 3,307 PCPA productions that have attracted more than 1.4 million patrons since 1974. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby recognize with gratitude those founders who in the 1970s created a cultural treasure, the Solvang Festival Theater. Those founders were Erling and Sue Poles, Roger Nielsen, Earl Peterson, Donovan Marley, Judy Gooder, Pat Roberts, Bob Riley, Kathleen Campbell, Willie Campbell, Joannis Yeager, Royce Llewellyn, Gary Mullins, Niels Nelson, Peter Weber, Paul Hanberg, Jan and John Severson, Betty Williams, Lucien Escalier, Bob and Margaret Rasmussen, Leonard Parsons, King Merrill, Cy Lotz, Bob New, Phil Battaglia, Dodge Crockett, Don Tagnazzini, Vince and Marge Evans, Jack and Sony Faust, and Robin Gainey. So in witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the city of Solvang to be affixed this 13th day of November, 2023. And I would like to present this to Peter.
Mayor? You can take pictures. Sure, I appreciate it. There is your signed proclamation. What you folks probably don't know is when we did the proclamation over at the Theater Fest, Peter had gotten a copy of this in advance. Once he developed it this big, stuck it on the wall, and I signed it with a Marxalite. My signatures are great. We're so proud to be part of it.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
One of those founders is in the audience.
Oh, is that right?
Campbell.
Oh, yeah. I don't know all this. Okay. The other proclamation I'd like to present this evening is to the Allen Hancock College, offering a bachelor's degree. Whereas a bachelor's degree attainment in northern Santa Barbara County are well below the state's average, wherein the region's two largest cities, Santa Maria and Lompoc, have college attainment rates below 13% compared to the statewide average of 35%. And whereas the nearest baccalaureate granting universities to the Santa Maria area are the University of California, Santa Barbara, 70 miles south, California Polytechnic State University, and at San Luis Obispo, 35 miles north, both of which maintain international profiles that result in low admission rates for local students. And whereas the benefits of a bachelor's degree is well documented with a recent nationwide study from the College Board reporting that median earnings of bachelor degree recipients are 65% higher than those of high school graduates with no degree. And whereas current data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicate that management jobs in fields such as operations, health services, transportation, and communications are in high demand and pay a livable wage in Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. And whereas the Allen Hancock College established over a century ago in 1920, is a federally designated Hispanic-serving intuition that has been recognized 5 times since 2011 by the Aspen Institution as a top 150 community college nationally. And whereas Allen Hancock maintains a strong track record of partnering with regional business and industry, municipalities, agencies, and K-12 educational institutions for workforce development, and contributes in excess of $550 million annually to the local economy. And whereas Allen Hancock College is applying to the Board of Governors of California Community Colleges to offer the first bachelor's degree for local students who may not be able to move or commute out of the region for their education. And whereas the proposed Bachelor's of Science in Applied Professional Studies will provide practical management education throughout the college's business department and will prepare graduates for entry-level positions in office management, human resources, and other basic business operations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby express our unequivocal support for Allen Hancock College in its application to the Board of Governors of California Community Colleges to offer a bachelor's degree in applied professional studies. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my signature and have caused the official seal of Solvang to be affixed on this 13th day of November 2023. I have not signed it yet. Do we have anybody here from Allen Hancock? Please.
Trustee for 14 years. There we go, Greg. 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Thank you, Mayor Infante and City Council. My name is Greg Pence. I've been a trustee for Allen Hancock College for the past 14 years and am the current board president. Our president, Superintendent Kevin Walters, is out of town, so I'm pitch hitting for him. So we want to thank you for the support. Some of our students have to choose between their families and pursuing an education, and that's what this degree we hope to change. So this degree is called Professional Studies, Applied Professional Studies. It's for mid-management people that need mid-management managers that can understand HR, a balance sheet, and management of a business. We've done a survey and we've realized that this is a need that has been unmet. So we've had support from other cities and the school districts in this project, and we want to thank you very much for this support of our application. We're submitting in January. We hope to hear by June of 2024 whether we've been accepted or not.
Super.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. A couple of more announcements before we get into this evening's information. First off, a couple days ago, there was a Solvang Chamber of Commerce 2023 award presentation meeting. And I would like to repeat, if you haven't heard, the businesses that received that that recognition. So for the small business of the year, it was the Solvang Spice Merchant. For the large business of the year was El Rancho Market. Winery of the year was Dana V Wines. Restaurant of the year was the Clean Slate Wine Bar. Nonprofit of the year, Hidden Wings. The John Martino Beautification Award went to Park Place. Ambassador of the year, Christy Payne. And Linda Johansson's Spirit of the Community Award went to Heather Bedford. So I think we should all recognize our businesses. There was a separate one. It wasn't published on the thing. Sorry. Couple of local comments. There was 2 media advisories came out of the Air Pollution Control District about prescribed burns going to happen this week. So if you start smelling smoke, one of them is the Trex burning to occur. It's about 54 acres will be burned during the training period, lasting up to 3 days, which was supposed to have started today. A mixture of grasses and oak woodlands will be burned, depending upon the conditions. Obviously, with the winds, that's questionable at this point in time. It's going to be out at the UCSB Sedgwick Reserve, northeast of Los Olivos. Also, there will be a similar situation, 470 acres of sagebrush and oak woodland to be complete at the Spalding Midland prescribed burn. This is at the Midland School at 5100 Figueroa Mountain Road. So please be aware that those are going to be happening in case you're smelling smoke. One last comment I have, as you're probably aware, Solvang has a sister city in Denmark. It's Aalborg. And Aalborg sent out a letter to me about the International Youth Games for Aalborg in 2025. So they've been hosting these games since 1975, but due to COVID, there was a halt in them. So they're going to bring them back. And they've started planning these games. They've started to announce this. It'll be August 5th through the 10th of 2025. So if we have anybody that wants to be a part of these games, then we need to get in touch with them, and I have the contact information if anybody needs it. Okay. Any other council comments, proclamations?
Mr. Mayor,
Dave?
I was
Sorry.
just going to mention that maybe we can defer the council member comments and requests until after public communication of the city manager report. That's the ordering of the agenda.
Ah, too late, isn't it? You should have told me about that earlier.
They print this thing out, it's really cool.
Yo, mine doesn't look like that. All right. We don't have any presentations at this point. We are going to go to public communications for non-agenda and consent items. If you would present that, please, Madam Clerk.
At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comments first.
Okay, I have a request here from C.J. Jackson. We'll get to you in a moment as soon as we do have the people that have filled out forms.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm C.J. Jackson. In this instance, I'm speaking on behalf of Rancho Alisal, the Alisal Guest Ranch, and the Alisal Ranch. You all have some pictures in front of you. What I am asking of you is to agendize for a future date a conversation with City Attorney Fleischman on the following question. One of the pictures shows a truck that makes regular deliveries to our ersatz community beneath the bridge. The other is a picture of what I posit to you is a business being conducted in the riverbed. I believe it is a bicycle remanufacture and bicycle repair business, which is going on very obviously beneath the bridge. I know that you have pursued an ordinance with the proper and humane dealing with places where the homeless need to reside in the absence of a reasonable shelter. However, I am concerned that the conduct of a business in the riverbed does not fall under that rubric, and I would ask you to pursue it. It's unsightly. It will probably take the express train to Surf Beach if we have another flood event, but it is starting to grow at such a pace of detritus, junk, and materiel that does not belong in a riverbed. So I therefore ask that you agendize at your earliest convenience, that you seek from Attorney Fleischman his assessment of whether or not I have a leg to stand on in this request. I may not, and I understand that. But it seems inappropriate to hitch a ride to the very needs of those who have no place to live to take advantage of that for something else. So that's that item. I have two short other ones. One is an attaboy. Last week, a leak of a broken gasket on one of the Alisal Ranch's irrigation pipes underneath the bridge shattered, cascading water down at the ungodly hour of 7 in the morning. I received a call at 7:20 from one of your employees to tell me about it, one Andrew Gwynn. This is an attaboy. We were able to get somebody out there and repair it within 2 hours. Thank you. That's what I think you want your employees to be doing, and so I thank you for that. The other is that periodically I know that abandoned bikes end up lying all around the community, and who is there to pick them up? I want to commend one city councilwoman for being able to step up and take care of that. I'm pleased to see that type of initiative. Thank you, Councilwoman Arona.
Thank you very much, CJ. Appreciate it. That was the only advance notification. Madam, you wanted to speak? Please tell us who you are so we have it for the records.
I apologize. I thought I didn't fill that out. Well, my name is Suzette Cormos, and I do appreciate everything. Whoops, there goes my phone. Everything that all of you do for us. But I'm really having concerns, and the more people I talk to, you had mentioned like 3 meetings ago that you work for us, right? You represent us. And a lot of us aren't really feeling represented. This plan that's going on with the building on Alamo Pintado is atrocious. And when I first moved to this beautiful little town, what attracted to me was the rural area, the quaintness of it, the beautiful lights, and just the quiet peacefulness of this town. And you want to build this monstrosity, three-story buildings on an area where there's already a bunch of traffic. What about the water problem? Did that just all of a sudden magically disappear? What about the parking? The proposed parking, I heard that everything always comes back to, well, the state said we had to. Push back on the state. Cambria is pushing back on the state. There's a moratorium on building because of water problems. That area has soil problems. And where do you think the extra parking is going to go? Viborg. All along Viborg. You think people are going to stop driving because you don't have enough parking in that three-story building monstrosity? So I'm asking you, represent us. It's not, I don't live on Mission Oaks. I actually live above it, but I care about our community. Do any of you on the council live near that area?
Yeah.
You are, where are you on that side? You don't, Robert. I know where you live.
I live on Village Lane. I bike to and from
Yeah.
work every day.
That place is not meant for three-story buildings. It's going to block the view of Mission Oaks. What about the crime? It's going to go up. The police officer that was here was already saying he doesn't have enough help for all the traffic. So what is this? Communicate with us. Tell more of the people in this town what's going on. We're all finding out, and the thread that I'm reading, I'm like, whoa, everybody feels betrayed and misled. And I don't think you want that, right? Aren't you working with us, for us?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else that has a comment for an item that's not on the agenda? We have one on Zoom. Okay, Tracy Beard, I believe. Is that you? There you go.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to let everyone know the chamber is selling Christmas trees again. And we are selling them for $100 and $125 with stands. And we also were able to do our second focus participation with Visit California this evening and work within the industrial side of Visit California into their website and what we can do to work with tourism together and working with the projects that they have and the data they have. So I hope to share that with you more in the future. But we were asked as our chamber to participate in that. And that's what I just wanted to let you know. So I hope to get together with you and work with you more on that end of it. And just that we all have a good holiday season and shop local on the 25th of November, right after for Shop Small Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we have nobody else, doesn't appear we have anybody else on Zoom for this or here in the house. So we'll bring it back to the council. We are into the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you. A couple of announcements. One is we have requested people to apply for the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee. As of mid-afternoon, we have exactly 0 applications. That opportunity closes on December 6th, and then it will be brought to council on the first meeting in January, I believe is what the current schedule is. Reminder to everyone, cleanup day, our community cleanup day is this coming Saturday, the 18th, at parking lot number 4. And we have information on our website. I believe it's been posted on Facebook. And a reminder, it is not hazardous materials. It is the larger bulky items that don't fit in your garbage can. It's what we're looking for. Also wanted to advise, I got a notice from NOAA this morning, and I'm not talking about the guy with the ark, although they could maybe do that NOAA weather forecasting. Says that the storm that is coming is projected to give the Solvang area almost 1.5 inches of rain between Wednesday morning and Saturday evening. So be prepared for that. You may have seen on our Facebook page, Hallmark Channel is looking to do a new Christmas TV series. So if you have a home or a neighborhood that does a lot of lighting and decorations for Christmas, they're thinking about featuring Solvang. And so we're encouraging folks to contact them. It says, the advertisement says, do you or someone you know go all out for decorating for the holidays with tons of Christmas lights? Does your block take holiday light displays to a whole other level? If so, we want to hear from you. Please email us at, and it's Xmas, the Christmas abbreviation, Xmas Light Display, all one word, @gmail.com. And again, if you have any questions about that, it is also posted on our Facebook page. And then the last thing I wanted to point out to council is we're going to give direction to our minutes clerk to start doing action minutes instead of so much detail. There's a lot of advantage to that, not the least of which is it saves time. Action minutes, the important part, the legal part is to record the topic, who made the motion, who made the second, and what the vote is. And so unless the council objects, that's the direction we'll be going to giving to the action, or to the minutes clerk.
Does that also include the names of the people who get up to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Comments, questions?
Yeah, but the recordings are still attached to that.
The recording is available, yes.
Any objections? from
And
anyone?
that's the end of my report.
Okay, so we have agreement by everybody that?
Randy, is that a cost issue, or is that,
It's more
Level of
about
detail.
efficiency. I mean, there is a cost, because obviously the longer it takes, the more it costs. But it's also takes space, it takes time. There's potential legal ramifications. I don't know, Dave, if you want to chime in on the advantages of action versus details.
I mean, the point of the minutes is to record what happened. It's not to provide a play-by-play, so to speak. I did have one agency where, for a while, they required a court reporter to transcribe the minutes verbatim, and the minutes ended up getting very, very long. So it's kind of the continuum between action minutes and a verbatim transcript. The problem with a verbatim transcript is, if you've ever read one, you realize that there's a lot more that goes into the sentences between the words, and the complaint from the board members in that situation was, yes, I know I said that, but that's not what I meant. And so it poses a problem for the minutes clerk to interpret what was meant as opposed to what was said. So action minutes takes that out of play altogether. And so it's Councilmember A made the motion, Councilmember B seconded, the vote was this. The following people spoke. And that is really what happened. So that's the point of the action minutes. It takes away that editorial license for whoever's preparing the minutes.
it doesn't sound much different than what we're getting now.
Ours are a little bit more extensive. They're not obviously
We're
a
not getting,
transcript.
we're not getting
but-
transcripts.
Yeah, but it does go into some detail as to what people said rather than just the fact that they spoke.
Okay.
So everybody's in concurrence that that's okay? Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's the end of my report, thank you.
Okay, so we're on to council comments and requests. Does anybody on the council want to make any comments about anything or any requests?
Well, I want to follow up on CJ's request with regard to a business being conducted anywhere in Solvang without a permit or a license. What is our course of action, Mr. Attorney?
Well, if indeed it is a business, and it's difficult to tell just from a sole photograph whether a business is being transacted or whether it's just a collection of detritus. If there's a business being transacted without a license, we have code enforcement opportunities. But as with many code enforcement opportunities, citing someone who is not going to show up in court and is not willing to pay the fines that are imposed is kind of a pointless exercise. If this is on private property, Mr. Jackson has the power to dismiss trespassers by contacting the sheriff's department if they're trespassing on private land, and he has the ability to also clean up his own land if there are people on there. But I would say that would be the first line of defense. As far as bringing it back to council for a discussion, if it involved city property where there was a policy decision about removal versus allowing something to stay, I would say it would be appropriate, but this sounds like something that can be handled at the staff level.
Is there something we could leverage of the city cleanup day that's coming up? And we had some volunteers who could go after the debris. Is that something we could do?
Well, that would be something between Mr. Jackson and the volunteers. That's not something that's city property that the city would get involved in, but it would provide an opportunity for perhaps low-cost or no-cost removal at that point as part of city cleanup.
I think part of the problem here is the riverbed is not Mr. Jackson's and it's not the city's.
Then the property owner of that
That's the
property.
county.
Yeah, the county's going to be the one that's going to need to get involved in that then. But it does pose some problems for the city to jump in on that kind of thing.
You want to? Yeah, please.
I pose this as a future agenda item because a portion of that is our property. The problem is we have suspended activity in lieu of the fact that it is unenforceable in the past due to it being a part of this conundrum we face on the homeless. So I've been told that if you remove belongings in the homeless context, there is a problem. Why I ask for it to be analyzed is I think there are nuances here that preclude me from acting without some guidance. And if it is, and we can assess, we have property lines that cover down there, but we have held back as a function of the nature of waiting for the county's and the state's solution to the homeless problem. I brought this because I think this is beyond that scope, but I know less about the definitions, and that's why I thought it needed a greater bit of analysis.
Thank you. Well, I will say this. For private property owners, those limitations on removing detritus from your own property are not the same as are applicable to the cities. Cities have constitutional limitations. Private property owner has power to control their property. But I don't want to give Mr. Jackson or anyone else in the public legal advice. I advise the city council on this type of thing. So if this were city property and the city would be looking at removing it, then I would have a different discussion with the city council, and perhaps not one in public because it might invoke litigation. But for private property owners, those restrictions are not the same.
Well, I would make the request that we just take a deeper look at it. We can do it, I know we've looked at it before, we can look at it again and include the sheriff, if that makes sense, Randy. And I think the one other thing to share is that the at-home program that targets the waterways in particular for rehousing the homeless in county-wide waterways. Our area in Solvang is scheduled for action in December. So we still have, wait and see. We have to wait and see. Okay, so we still have something is coming.
We just don't know what yet. Okay. Any other comments?
I have comments. One of my comments, well, first of all, I think it's really interesting that I can't water ski or swim in Lake Kachuma, but anybody that wants to can use the river as a bathroom or a dumping ground from Kachuma all the way to Lompoc. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. But my comment is a question, basically. When you're dealing with RENA, and I think it's important for residents to know this, Ms. Kormos came up here and mentioned she would like the city to push back against Sacramento, and 3 weeks ago, we ran into that when I was trying to push back against COVID, and we said it's really dangerous because you don't know what Sacramento's going to do. They're going to withhold money, they're going to do this, so you really can't upset Sacramento. So when dealing with RENA, the RENA numbers were 215 that we need to have built, affordable units by the year, I forget what.
It's in 8 years, I believe.
8 years. So
Yeah.
we need to have 250 affordable units.
Yeah.
Because the state mandates that. So what is the penalty if we tell the state we're not going to do it? And this is a question that I would like the residents to know. What is the penalty?
Well, the state has a number of different approaches. They could withhold funding. That's a primary one. I know that the Attorney General's office has filed litigation against some local cities to compel them to comply with state law. Huntington Beach has been on the bad end of that a number of times.
Temecula.
So the state has made it very clear that affordable housing is a priority, and it has given the directive to local agencies to clear barriers to that. The cities don't have to construct the housing, but they have to remove barriers to constructing affordable housing. So rezones are part of that, upzoning areas to allow greater capacity where they're already residentially done. But ultimately, it's going to be the private market that has to build that housing in the absence of affordable housing funds being provided us by the state.
And I think it's really important for residents to know that it's not a matter of we want this, it's a matter of the state mandates it. What are we going to do? Okay, we don't do it because we're going to stand up Sacramento, and then look what we end up with. The residents are getting very upset that we're 95% built out. We don't have a whole lot of room here, yet we have these mandates, and the state treats 482 cities, 483 cities, all the same, and they allocate numbers that you got to have this, and this city does this, and you got to get it done. And they don't look at any other factors. So I think it's really important for the residents to know that. Nobody's trying to bulldoze Solvang, but we have to come up with these numbers, otherwise we get punished by Sacramento. And no one seems to understand cause and effect. So those are my comments. Thank you.
One of the things I would put on that, we have our planning manager here. If you watch the Planning Commission meeting Monday night, last Monday night, wasn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have a plan that will comply with, actually with the 20% over, I think it was, with 215, I believe,
That's the
units.
over number, yes.
That will be available here based on doing some rezoning based on a number of things and the buildings that are in the plan. ADUs count for some of that.
Correct.
There's a lot of that, but that whole meeting, there was a major portion of that planning commission meeting that was addressing that specific item. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It is not something that we always have direct control over.
Correct.
Well, just to add on to everyone's comments, we have limited control.
Yeah.
The city, and therefore the council, has the ability to determine only very limited metrics and criteria, and that's zoning and some codes that we are able to impose. And that is the enablement of the development community, who is then, in the free market, able to build what they do determine, or what they can with their available land. So the imposition from the state is that some of the conditions, like water moratoriums or parking moratoriums or traffic considerations, have been removed from our ability to control this in meeting these specific RHNA numbers. So there's a very narrow window, a needle for us to thread.
And Mr. Mayor, since the commenter mentioned Cambria and its water moratorium, I thought I'd chime in because I represented Cambria throughout that period of time. Cambria is a community services district. It does not have land use approval. That is all done through the county of San Luis Obispo. They provide water, and they have not been able to provide water hookups. So that's a very different type of analysis. But the county is the one that's responsible for land use in that area.
The other comment, too, is the lady that came up and spoke was specifically addressing the Lot C situation. There is a meeting between the owner of the property and the housing authority of the Mission Oaks.
Homeowners Association,
Homeowners Association. What did I say?
Housing Authority.
Thank you. It wasn't the Housing Authority, the Homeowners Association. Okay, I'm old. I screw up occasionally. So the owner, anyway, is trying to get together with all of the associated parties to make sure that what's done is not horrible. We all have our own opinions on that,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, it is something that we're trying to
Thank you.
resolve.
One last follow-up. With RHNA numbers, how does it work with, for example, Santa Ynez, Los Olivos, that are not incorporated cities? Is that the county, and then the county distributes those numbers to those based on population?
I'm not sure how the county allocates the responsibility for it. That's not something that I've been involved in, but they do have their own number as well.
Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Go ahead.
Is this on? I'll answer that question. Thank you, Councilwoman Clark. My name is Rafael Castillo. I'm the planning manager for the city of Solvang. The Santa Barbara COG actually assigns an unincorporated county number to the Santa Ynez Valley. So they're the ones that are responsible for providing that number, and they're in the similar boat. Their RHNA targets, there are numbers that need to get met before 2031. And yes, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the housing element. That actually will be coming before you at your next meeting in December. So we're doing some minor modifications based on a meeting we had with HCD, and that, again, we'll get a final doc out to you, and that's for your consideration in your December meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And for those who aren't familiar with our acronyms, RHNA is Regional Housing Needs Assessment.
Thank you very much. Any other council comments, questions?
A couple of things, notes I made. I might, as a remedy for Mr. Jackson, I might suggest that he consider calling the hazmat. It appears that could be a hazardous situation down there if there's petroleum products for creating a bicycle shop or something like that. And then even notifying Fish and Game while it is in the river. On another note, I was disappointed in some vandalism that occurred in the downtown area. Some kids, I guess, had cut the cords to our sparkly lights on trees, well over 15 trees, I think it is. 29 trees. I will give another attaboy, though, to our staff who was out fixing them today. Saw them first thing this morning. And if there's any retailers along the Copenhagen or Alisal and the damaged areas that have video, please submit that to the Sheriff's Department. A claim or a report's been made, and I would like to hold these people accountable.
Do we know it was kids?
I don't know that.
We don't know who.
I've heard that thrown around. I didn't. Okay.
I don't know that. And then, so anyway, that's, and then today's my brother's birthday. A shout out to Joe.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you all. All right. With that, let's go to item number 4, which is the consent items. Any items that council members want to pull or discuss? If not, a motion to approve the consent items, please.
I'd like to make a modification to the minutes. It says in there, pledge was led by a John Oakes. It's actually Steve Oakes that did that. Real minor, but other than that, I move to approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Let's move on to discussion item 6A. If you would introduce that, please, Madam Clerk.
Discussion to provide action regarding extension of marketing services contract with Tom Jones Associates, Islet Agency, and Stiletto Marketing.
Staff report.
Sorry, getting open to my agenda. Yes, so we have had the services of Stiletto, Islet, and Tom Jones Associates, otherwise known as TJA, for about 6 months now. As I pointed out in my staff report, the city issued an RFP for tourism marketing managed services in April of last year. The solicitation said the agreement would be for 2 years with a possible 2-year extension. The firm that received the initial contract did not work out, and short-term contracts were issued to Islet and Stiletto. And then in May, we added time to that and hired TJA. They've all worked together very well, and since we are rapidly approaching the end of those contracts, staff seeks council direction for the continuation of these marketing services. They all wish to continue to work together, and since they have all exceeded expectations to cooperate with one another, staff recommends that council authorize the continuation of this 3-party marketing team. And specifically, we're requesting an extension of the contract for the full 18 months to the remainder of the 2-year period, primarily for staff time savings and things not having to put out another RFP in just a couple of months. Staff will return at a future meeting for council approval of a job description for a new marketing coordinator that will round out that team. So options include, again, this is not approving a contract, it's just providing staff direction. So the request is to provide direction to come back at a future meeting with amended agreements for an 18-month extension, or if staff or if council wishes, a 6-month extension, or another option as directed by council majority. An 18-month extension for all 3 vendors would total approximately $536,500. A 6-month extension, basically through the remainder of the current fiscal year, would be about $157,000. The difference of $379,500 would be budgeted in the next budget, next fiscal year. I would like to point out, I did check with accounting staff, and we have approximately $180,000 of unallocated funds in the marketing department currently, so in the marketing budget, rather. So there's plenty of money for this contract to continue for the remainder of this fiscal year. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Council, questions of the staff report?
Are we getting any presentations, or the decks were just provided as material?
They have provided a slide, and I apologize for that. Yes, they did provide information, and I saw John, I spaced out on his name, I saw John here. He's here to answer questions, as is Anna. And then it looks like Leanna from Islet is available online if council has any questions of them. Can invite John to the podium to talk about his impression of what's gone on, if you'd like.
Would you like to have John come up and talk to us about this? No. Do you have any need for it, or is the report sufficient?
Report sufficient.
Anybody? Okay.
I think, guys, that the working relationship between the three contractors is clearly working. And the material that we're getting, in particular from the social media team, from Islet, and from the detail that Stiletto consistently gives us is consistent and great. I'm concerned about one thing that was exposed when we went to go live with the website, and that is that our SOW, or our lack thereof, of defining very clear deliverables on everything outside of, or what is clearly TJA scope right now, is really lacking. There is no clear definition of deliverables, no clear definition of the pricing to the deliverables, and while this is all dependent on the original RFP, when you go back and look at the RFP that was done in 2022, it's a 10-page RFP that is also seriously lacking. So if we take a look at extending this for 18 months, we have almost no definition of what we're getting and no input from this current council or this current staff or a leader in the marketing department that can actually manage what we are getting if we commit to 18 months. We have not done anything to put our own marketing staff or committee in place once we did away with the TAC. So we're driving with our contractors' hands on the wheels and very little check and balance. So I would support a 6-month extension, but not beyond that if we don't go back and revisit our RFP and our marketing scope.
Yeah, John, please come on up.
Well, I was prepared just to kind of go through what we had promised and what we achieved. And I won't even read from my notes, but I'll tell you what our deliverables were extremely clear. And we've delivered on everything. And our pricing was extremely clear. $22,000 website budget, 3 months' time, done. Did we go over budget? No. Did we go over the time that my firm did? Absolutely yes. But I chose not to charge you for that time because I'm a man of my word and I told you I was going to keep my promise. I sat up here and I told you that we were not going to replace any of the current vendors, that we were going to work with them. You yourself, Councilwoman, Councilmember, acknowledge that. We've had a good working relationship. We have delivered social media, the in budget, what we talked about doing. We've delivered you CrowdRiff, which has completely changed the ability to put photos on the website and also in social media. We are in the midst of an advertising campaign, clearly defined what the budget was for that. If you go back and look at what you approved 6 months ago, that was $25,000. Delivered, we're going to be delivered on budget and actually exceed that budget by value added of over $14,000. I do not know where you feel like that the costs are not clear, have not been achieved. In my proposal, which I was more than prepared to take you through slide by slide, it's very, very clear what we're going to do and what those prices are. If you go to the budget of the 6-month and the 18-month, clearly defined. And I will just say one final thing. You can have an RFP, you can go out and look again, but you're going to take the chance that you took with the last 2 firms. They're going to sound great and not perform. We've performed. We've proved it. Ask your staff. They'll tell you that we have. And they're the ones that we've been working with on a daily basis. And I just have to, at this point too, also commend them. Randy has done an exceptional job of coordinating 3 big egos, because people in this business have egos, trust me, including myself. He has kept us all at bay, working together, doing a great job. And also I want to shout out to all his staff, particularly Candace, who has helped us immensely on the website, giving us the clear direction on what we had to update. And believe me, let me tell you something. It was a mess, a total mess. And it had been that way for several years. And we corrected that mess. And it's running great now. And we're going to help with further budgeting. We're going to make it even look nicer and function even better. But you're already up by 1,000 visits a day with us taking it over. We know what we're doing. We have clients for 25 years, not a year, not through one RFP. The reason we do is because we keep our promises and we over-deliver. And that's what we're going to, that's what we've done. And if we get this contract, that's what we'll do again.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Comment, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, Randy, this proposal at the 536,000, that's for the full
18 months.
term? Okay, so that's the balance of this year and
Right, about 157 is this year, and the balance is next year, which is obviously not budgeted yet.
right. Okay. And your bandwidth to quarterback these three vendors, or the team, if you will, has that been impacted in any way? Are you comfortable with that role?
I'm comfortable as it's currently working. Again, we're going to be bringing the job description for marketing/events coordinator position back to council here, probably not the next meeting, but the first meeting in December.
Pretty quick.
And it's working well. I mean, it doesn't really take a lot of my time. Certainly now that the sheriff's contract is put to bed and the Teamsters contract is done, I have more time. But we have a 45-minute Zoom call every other Tuesday. It moves around based on my schedule. But generally speaking, every 2 weeks we have a 45-minute Zoom call. And I get emails every few weeks from the social media team, and asking for me to approve the topics or the content. And more often than not, I mean, I go through it. I enjoy that. I mean, I don't have any expertise, as we all know, in the marketing field, but I'm learning it. And again, I think we work well as a team. But I have enough time. And then, again, the idea with the marketing coordinator position coming online, some of the time that I am engaged with will be delegated.
Are we committing to that marketing coordinator hire? Because we
Say that
have
again,
not
I'm sorry?
posted that job.
Please repeat. I didn't hear you.
Are we committing to the marketing coordinator hire?
That's the intent, yes.
Have you posted that job?
Not yet. We don't have a job description approved by council.
Can you bring that?
I intend to bring it at probably the first meeting in December.
I want to clarify my comments. The comments were not about costs around TJA. They clearly came in budget, and we have gotten what was articulated in a single slide of the deliverables. I've never seen, ever, a SOW, a scope of work defined by a single PowerPoint slide. Bullets. When we had to determine whether our website was ready for production, we had no documentation to conclude whether we were at end of job or whether we had more work to be done. There was no definition of what that work, which really was a port from the old platform to the new platform, entailed. It didn't define what was a new content, how much new content, how many new pages, what was the policy for onboarding new businesses, when did we determine any of the content would change for new business requirements or requests, none of that. So let me be clear. The TJA RFP response, what's missing in current proposal that I would like to see in a description of the work effort are things like who are we targeting in our marketing? That was in your RFP response. How do we get people to stay longer in Solvang? That was in your RFP response. Prioritizing hotel bookings in the website functionality. Cooperating with the Chamber of Commerce and other entities that are marketing for the Valley. None of that is in the proposal right now that we're looking at in this packet. Those are just simple examples of what should be defined deliverables. And I'll refer you back to the Abbey documentation that we supported or reviewed before we paid any invoice was extremely detailed. We do not have that now.
Any other comments? Yes,
I
sir.
do. Sorry, I wasn't quite finished with Randy. the 536,000, is that for the team? Or is
Yes,
that-
the
Okay,
team,
it's for all
entire-
three of them?
all three of them.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I think that Solvang does a really good job of scaring away really good people, and this is really making me angry. It's just sad. One of the most respected city managers in the state, who has since left Pismo Beach, recommended TJA, and I think we were lucky to get them from where we've been and where we're headed. And I just think, I don't want to scare away good people. And I appreciate what you do, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Well, speaking of city managers, the RFP that was issued, let's just be honest, was from 2022 under a city manager that is no longer with us. We have a new crew. We should give the entire city the consideration of how their dollars are being spent to draw visitors to the city and represent us in the best way possible. And then let the public know how their money is being spent.
Okay, with that, let's go to public comment then. I have one request. Aryavu Dougherty. Did I get that right? I keep messing up her name. I apologize.
My name is Aria View Doherty, and I'm a high schooler at St. Anne's High School, and I live in Solvang. As a 17-year-old, I can't claim to understand all the nuances of the financial aspects of this, but I do understand what works on social media and on websites. And the website that Solvang currently has, that I understand TJA has put together, doesn't look so great or contemporary. I've made a few websites for school projects and spent a weekend on them, and they've looked pretty similar. I don't want to undermine all the time and effort that was put into those websites because into the Solvang website, because it does. It's a different beast to make something from scratch, but in terms of drawing in an audience to Solvang that will be younger and more internet savvy, which is obviously the goal with a social media and website-based campaign, I don't believe that this particular website demonstrates that Solvang is going to meet that caliber and that aspect of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, I want to congratulate you on your award area from the Santa Barbara Women's Political Committee for your involvement in civic work. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Clerk, Manager, sorry.
Eventually, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there, obviously.
So I just wanted to point out, the city has two websites. So to be clear, we're talking about the Solvang USA website,
Right.
not the City of Solvang website. I don't know if there's any confusion about that. The other thing is the work that TJA was hired to do was to recreate or improve the functionality of the Solvang USA website. They clearly have done that. And this new proposal that they've given, they've added more money to the cost to be able to improve the appearance. I shared an email with council it's been probably a month or so ago now that they provided a response about the functionality of the other websites that were being pointed to by other communities, or by folks saying other communities' websites were much better. And again, appearance-wise, absolutely, they do look better than ours. But functionality-wise, they receive grades of, D and F, which in school is not good. Whereas our functionality is in the A range, AB range, and it may not look the sleekest, but it certainly does provide that functionality. But again, this proposal includes additional monies to improve the appearance as well.
And the cost of some of those websites was multiples
Yeah, it's
beyond
big.
what we're
So
spending.
could we be really specific what work is being done to improve the website?
John, you want to help out with that?
It's not in the packet. It's not clear, John.
Well, it was clear in the PowerPoint that part of the money that we're going to take, I think when I first addressed the council, I said websites are never done, and they're not. It's like building a house that you have to continue to remodel and add things. What we did was exactly what we said we were going to do. We delivered a site that was totally functional, that was looked at by Google in the highest regard. We did indeed talk about the priority to the lodging. We took all of the lodging properties off of the old site that weren't paying TOT. We developed a whole brand-new lodging functionality to this website. As far as the budget goes, which is clearly stated in the report that you have, the PowerPoint slides, $5,000 a month for website maintenance, design. So we'll still be doing the same things we're doing and putting on new events, taking businesses off that are no longer in business, adding new businesses. But in addition to that, we'll be redesigning it as we go along too. We were pretty speedy about this, and thank God we were, because when we wanted to go live, the old website still existed. In the time period where we were instructed not to go live, the old site went down. This had nothing to do with us. This had to do with an agency, not Abby, but the agency before them, not filling out the proper paperwork to keep the site going, the security part of it. So what happened was we tried to get a hold of those people, non-existent. They wouldn't help us at all. So had we not designed this site, had we not gone live and been able to go 5 days later, you would have been without a website. And that would have been a disaster, especially going right into the holidays and Yule Fest. And just in that time period that you were down for 5 days, the time period that we were making the corrections that we were going to make, Google's, punishes you. And also, I think I make this very clear that, and I tried to make this clear before, when we presented that site, I made it very clear that we were not done. I made it very clear. I know what I said. I said we were still working on it. We chose to go live because we were afraid the old site would go down. It was exactly what happened. And I made it very clear also that we were never going to leave the site without proper representation of visuals and copy content, which we did. Go on the site now. It's changed. And it's exactly what I said we would do. And we did it in record time.
Can you tell us what you will be doing going forward?
I'll be happy to. Just hire us and I'll give you a full presentation. I'll have my web guy come and talk to you through Zoom and tell you exactly what we're doing. But no, I don't mean to be flippant about it, and I don't mean it in any disrespect.
Hire you and then you'll tell us.
We're going to redesign.
That's what you said, John.
What's
Hire
that?
you and then you'll tell us.
Well, then I'm clarifying that, if I may. We're going to continue to improve the visuals. We didn't have any new visuals to work with either. That's another component that we didn't even talk about here tonight. We produced all new video content for you, all new photographic content. Where do you think that went? Well, that went to the website, but guess where else it went? It went to Anna to do her public relations work. It went to Stiletto to do Islet to do their social media work. One of the first photo shoots we ever did was because Anna needed that photos desperately for a media person that she had because there was none that existed. That was the very first project we did, and we took that out of our creative budget to make that happen. And we're going to do that with Yule Fest too, because Islet, according to them, is out of the creative money to be able to shoot the visuals for that. So we're going to do that. And I've got a contractor coming in to do it at a very nominal rate because we're running out of money in that category because of the past work we've done. But I guess to answer your question is we're going to redesign the site as we go along. We're going to make it look better, more visual. But I'd like for some people to kind of give me some ideas on what they don't like about it too.
Could
And
you
we'll correct
clarify, is your proposal fixed fee?
The parts of it are, as far as there's a $1,500 a month retainer for account service, which I did not charge you for this last 6 months. I did all of my time without any charge. The $5,000 a month for the website work, if we don't do that work, we're not going to charge you. If you elect not to do the ad campaigns that we've instructed, which are clearly defined by budget, you don't want us to do those, we won't charge you for that. We don't spend the money as we go.
Are you going to charge us any more than the $268,000?
But that's what's proposed, you mean?
Yes.
No. Did I charge you any more
It
for the
is
6
fixed
months?
fee. Is that correct?
It's a
That
fixed
is fixed fee for the work there. If there's something that requires us to do more, we'll get approved by you and by the city and by.
John, all I'm saying is you need to define what is in the fixed fee.
It's defined.
It's not very defined. It's one slide with a series of bullets. And I'm simply asking for you to detail it out in the same way that you did in the original RFP.
So, website enhancements, monthly update and maintenance, that's where you'd like a clear definition of that, correct?
Yes.
And social media management, this is exactly what we've been doing by complementing Islet. We're doing, that's strictly just paid targeted advertising for Facebook and Instagram, where we target specific things. For like Yule Fest, these next 2 months, the budget goes directly toward social media ads to promote that event. The fall advertising for Southern California, there was a fairly defined, I gave you what we were going to be doing for that campaign prior to us placing that, which we would do in this particular case.
So are those the same ads, the same campaigns?
No, not at all.
Repeated? Okay, so
No, it will be repeated in one sense.
what do we assume is within that bullet? You
Of
see
what?
my point?
Which bullet?
Your winter and your fall advertising
Well,
campaigns.
I think part of this is that each and every one of these items, Brandy's going to take a look at, or his team, or the coordinator, and probably for this board, the council. I've been here every month, like I promised to be, giving you very clear direction on what we were doing. I outlined that campaign that we did right now that's going on. I told you exactly what the target audience was. I told you exactly what the tactics were, and I told you exactly who we were using, which was the Bay Area News Group. I will do that again on each of these campaigns. But there will be one consistent call to action on all these campaigns, and that is to get the lodging as a top priority. Because we want to grow your TOT, because we want you to have higher TOT so your citizens can then pay for the services that they want and that they need. We stated this earlier, and I think the residents probably are aware of this. You're in the top 10 most dependent on your city services for tourism. We recognize that because we have another client like that, Pismo Beach. So we make that lodging a top priority.
Thank you, John. Let's bring this discussion to a conclusion, please. Can I have a council motion to either accept one of these drafts? We got the public comment already. Did you want to also bring it up, John? CJ, please.
Just as someone with a little historical context, because you talk about the RFP and you talk about the previous city manager, and when they received an RFP and when they put together a marketing plan, they talked about the previous manager and the previous city manager and the previous council. What you need to do is to determine and get assistance on how to be good consumers of municipal marketing, because you're talking past each other. I can remember talking about coming to a meeting here where they counted up internet hits, and they talked about deliverable hits, and those were the metrics. The market's changed. I would almost, if I were sitting there with you, ask your trio to provide you with an assessment of what is a municipal consumer of marketing services to expect, whether it be internet, whether it be media, so that the metrics you're talking about and the metrics that are in your head are the same ones they're presenting to you, because they have a great deal of pride in what they have done. But it feels like you're talking past each other. And this has happened in every council I've been since I moved here 20 or 28 years ago, is this stuff is hard. This stuff has its own language. It requires fluency. It requires a conception of what you want, and then translate what you want into the metrics that demonstrate the performance you're looking for. These are the guys that have it. They're providing their assessment to you, meeting what they thought was in the RFP. And you've all stepped into an RFP you inherited. I would encourage you to study or learn or to assess with their help what a good consumer of their product would be doing and would be looking at it, and how.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, CJ.
All right, so at this point, we have been asked to give staff direction to return to a future meeting with an amended agreement for 18 months or 6 months or some other option. So what I'm looking for at this point is a motion on any one of those three and a second, please.
I will make a motion to direct staff to return to the future meeting with amendments agreement for an 18th-month extension for each contractor.
Oh, I'll revise that. I'll make a motion to approve the 6-month extension for all 3 contractors, and in parallel, revisit our overall marketing plan and make action to immediately hire our marketing coordinator, who will help us with the 3 contractors in oversight and redefinition of what our long-term marketing plans would be.
Okay, so we have one motion first and a second motion.
It was posed as it sounded to me like a substitute motion of some type.
That was the second motion.
Okay.
right?
Didn't we vote on the first motion?
Well, there was
Yeah.
not a second to either of them, so.
Well, there was no time.
So I would
Politics.
suggest to the council that because a substitute motion was offered, if Councilmember Clark is interested in agreeing to that, then Mayor Pro Tem Arona's substitute would be take the place of the original motion. But Councilmember Clark should be given the opportunity to determine whether or not he would accept that amendment.
No.
Okay, so then we are asking for a second to the original motion.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
No.
Mayor Infante.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, so let's go to discussion item 6B. If you would introduce that to us, please, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible action regarding $450,000 donation request from Santa Ynez Valley Senior Advisory Council, DBA Solvang Senior Center, toward construction of the new Solvang Senior Center.
Staff report.
Yes, so we have several members in the audience here tonight to observe and possibly comment on this item. So, as we all know, the Solvang Senior Center has provided service to the residents of our area and the greater Santa Ynez Valley for decades. As further described in the PowerPoint slides we're going to watch here in a minute, the existing building has outlived its useful life and is in dire need of a replacement. While the original construction estimate for the new and larger facility was $3.3 million, the center recently learned that their project is subject to prevailing wage rules that will increase the cost by almost $900,000. Although the city has contributed to operating funds of over $300,000 over the last few fiscal years, to date we have not donated anything toward the building fund that has so far collected over $3.6 million in gifts and pledges from the community, including almost $600,000 from its own board and members of the fundraising steering committee. I've attached a letter that the center sent to me, and they have now they've requested the city contribute $450,000 to help close the gap between the amount they have now and the amount that they need to complete the building. The amount can be allocated in a lump sum or pledged as a certain amount over a period of time. Staff recognizes that this request falls outside the normal annual grant window. However, given that the construction cannot begin until the funding is secure, and extended delays always result in additional costs, staff believes that the circumstances regarding the shortfall warrant council consideration at this time instead of waiting until spring. So staff is looking for direction, and we can do the PowerPoint here in a minute. Our options include to direct staff to return at a future meeting. Again, this is direction. We don't have the grant agreement before you tonight, but based on the council's direction, we'll return with the grant paperwork along with any necessary budget adjustments for council approval to give the amount in a one-time lump sum or smaller amounts divided over any number of years. I believe Montecito Bank's willing to carry the pledges for up to 10 years. The same amount as number one, and otherwise same number of number one, but do it in smaller amounts, or decline the request altogether. And if council approves this request, staff will return with a more detailed financial and impact analysis and a recommendation of the funding source, which could potentially include Measure U. So with that, I would call a representative of the senior center, as soon as I can get the slideshow up, to do the, go over the slides.
Good evening. Let me get myself organized here and a pair of glasses on so I can see what I'm doing.
Announce yourself.
Yes, that's what I'm doing next.
Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Campbell. I serve on the steering committee for the Solvang Senior Center for this capital campaign. I'm also a Solvang property owner, and I am here to share with you the background on where we are and how you can help. I'm going to move quickly with history by reminding you that in 1983, our modular buildings were installed, and they were used then, just so you know. By 2018, the building was giving out, and the board began to make plans for a permanent building. We're here tonight for a number of reasons. We know that we're facing a big increase in our over 65 population, not only in Solvang and the San Ynez Valley, but countywide. So we designed our building to handle that growth. Our community has already donated millions of dollars, and recently, as I'll explain in more detail, we faced increased costs due to the prevailing wage regulations. So now, we're asking Solvang to become a partner in this project, a project that is going to be right in the middle of your town. So today, for for the services we provide valuable services to the Solvang community and the broader community. Our programs and activities promote healthy aging, providing tools so people enjoy vital and independent lives, staying at home longer, conserving their finances for longer, and we have really good partnerships with places like Atterdag and Friendship House when that time comes. But the longer we can keep people in their homes, the better off they are and the stronger our community is. Our activities keep our over 65 and really over 55s, keeps their minds sharp, their bodies healthy, and their spirits soaring. There are statistics on this slide I know you've seen, over 600 members, more than 20 activities in a week, 8,000 meals served annually, and 8,000 opportunities to participate in an activity annually, and 400 free tax returns, not just for seniors, but for people who qualify in your local community who need help having their taxes done. So, you've seen our current home. It's well used. It's in need of constant repair just to keep it safe. Its size limits what we can offer today, and I know you all agree. Our active aging adults deserve better than this. So, why now? Well, we had to do something. The building was becoming unsafe. And so we could have designed something small to meet our current and short-term needs, but that would have been short-sighted. Today, 30% of Solvang residents are over 65. In 2017, the county demographic study determined that by 2060, the over 65 population in Santa Barbara County will have increased by more than 100%. So we designed our building knowing that there was future growth, and we'd better plan for that so we didn't make it obsolete before we got to the end of the 10th year. So here's our future. a state-of-the-art community center, the first in your town in decades. 5,600 square feet with tons of features to make it flexible now and flexible in the future. The new center is going to allow us to double our space. That's going to allow us to hold concurrent programs. That's going to allow us to increase the number and variety of the programs we offer. That's going to improve the wellness and the independence of the people who use the center. And it prepares us for the increased membership we know we will have. Over the past 5 years, we've accomplished a lot. We completed our design. We're nearing receipt of our building permits soon. And we raised more than 90% of our original campaign goal. Almost $3.7 million in pledges and donations. And as Randy said, almost $600,000 from our board and steering committee. Recently, our board and steering committee added a $100,000 challenge pledge to ask our members to step up and join us in completing the center. Over our first 4 weeks, our members have donated almost $40,000. And I just want to tell you 2 short stories about that. There was a couple who came in to meet with Ellen, and they said, we got to be really careful about our finances. But we just finally decided we're just going to give you $25 a month for 10 months so that we can have donated $250. Another family said, we want to give $500 a year for 3 years because our mother thrived when she was going to the center, and we want to make sure that center is there in the future for new active aging adults. So we do face a challenge of prevailing wage, and where it stems from is we've received very low rent charges, which is zero. A few years ago, it was $1 a year from the county. That has been wonderful. It was a game changer for a small organization with a small annual budget. But recently, the county told us because that is considered a public benefit, it means that our project now has to comply with California state prevailing wage regulation. And there's no waiving that. The county can't waive it. You guys can't waive it. There's no way to get rid of it. It means, obviously, that our construction costs are going up dramatically, significantly. The components of those are that the prevailing wage takes our labor costs up to, let us call it union scale. It's a scale that's set by California. And on top of that, there are all the other costs that go along with that, overhead, profit. Also, it's interesting because some of our lowest bid contractors that we were working with in the beginning have elected not to bid under prevailing wage. So our current best estimates are that our costs could rise by more than $875,000. So what were our options? We could raise more money or reduce the size of the building, and the board of the center decided they must keep the building size to prepare for the growth they know is coming. That meant we had to find additional financial resources, so we've increased our goal by $1.1 million. Solvang has been a long-standing partner with the Solvang Senior Center. You have been a reliable funder for our operating programs, providing 25 to 30% of our annual operating budget annually. In return, we deliver you really cost-effective essential services for your 55 and older seniors and active aging adults. You've also been a great partner during this transition, providing us one-time relocation costs for when we are out of our building and the use and the value of the Legion Wing. Those two items, $60,000 and about $80,000 worth of value, along with an average of around $54,000 a year over the last 3 years for our operating budgets and some fees that have been waived, comprise the amount that Randy spoke about. So what do we need? We believe we've brought Solvang Valley together for this project, and we've raised almost $3.7 million. So now we need the city to partner with us to help us build this center. We're requesting, as Randy has said, $450,000, just a portion of our total costs. We are also pursuing other governmental grants that look promising to provide, after your grant, what we think will be most of the remaining costs. When we're done, to complete our total direct construction and development costs associated, architects and permits that can't be waived, nearly 50% of the donations will have come from individuals and businesses in our community. 30% from local area foundations. We are asking the city of Solvang to make a grant of 9% of the total budget. And then we'll raise the remaining 14% through these other grants and other donors. We all know the reasons to say yes to this request. The community needs this project today. The over 65 population is growing fast. We are requesting a fraction of our total costs, and those can be paid over multiple years to suit the budgets for the city. We believe this is a long-term investment for Solvang to make in its own infrastructure. You'll have a new community building in Solvang for 10% of the total cost. Our community needs this. Our independent, active, aging adult community deserves this. Our project is shovel-ready, but before we can start, we have to show we have the financial commitments to build the project. It's important we move quickly so we can start this spring. So finally, I'm going to ask you, I actually have lived in this community long enough to be around when these were all built. In the 1960s, we built the hospital, the library, the Legion Wing, and I actually think this building too. Marie can tell me whether that's right or not. In the 70s, we built Solvang Theater Fest. In the 90s, the community came together and built the YMCA, and in the 2000s, Rotary and the city of Solvang partnered together and built Sunny Fields Park. Those are institutions that you can't imagine not having in your community today, and that's what this new senior center is going to do for you. Our project epitomizes how we will build infrastructure that creates more community resilience and strength. You'll be showing your community that we value the over 65 population because they continue to contribute and enrich our active community. And so, in conclusion, Randy, I'd like to thank you, and I'd also like to ask you to join us at the center. Come meet some new people. Come to the ukulele group. Do pedal power with Jan. Play mahjong with the ladies. Do some fiber arts. Come to our lecture series. We're talking next week about how we're all going to make it through the holidays with Katie Fleckenstein. So we encourage you to come and sign up in case you got a lot of family coming for Thanksgiving. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions for staff report from the council?
I do have some questions. Regarding the request and the options listed, I didn't see anything in the way of debt. Have they considered taking on debt for the request, and what was the outcome of that?
That's a great question. Our lease with the County of Santa Barbara says we are not allowed to have any liens on either the land they own or the building we construct.
Wow.
Now, whether somebody could give an example that the county could, someday find, but the county has never done that on any land in Santa Barbara County that they're aware of.
That they own,
That they own.
correct?
Yep, and they don't allow the improvements that somebody else places on their property to be subject to liens. And I see our attorney agreeing.
Has there been a request of the county for grants or funds?
At the moment, Joan Hartman has recommended that we apply for a CDBG, Community
Block grant, yeah.
Development Block Grant, and that application opens on November 15th, and we will be submitting a grant for that.
And that would be part of your
That's correct.
14%?
That will accomplish, if we can receive that, that will accomplish a significant portion of that 14%. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, before we get to that, excuse me just a second, Mr.
So
Clark.
just a quick answer, the Montecito Bank has agreed to carry, based on the pledges, for up to 10 years. So they aren't borrowing money per se, but just the way the pledges work out, they're taking that as a commitment that it will give the senior center the
That's correct.
ability to repay.
The pledges can be used as secure as the collateral. And the bank is willing to take their pledges as collateral.
Pledges,
And the county's fine with that. The county understands that.
So Kathleen, would our grant, if we spread it over X number of years, be considered a pledge?
Yes, ma'am.
And is there a interest cost?
Yes, once
associated
we
with
get
that?
to the point where we're borrowing money from them, there would be an interest expense that would be associated until those pledges are paid off.
And is that factored into the ask, or you would conclude that once we make a decision?
We haven't factored that specifically into the ask, but we are dealing with our contingencies and other percentages to make sure that we have some cushion. Thank you.
May I ask what that rate is?
Oh,
see
that rate won't be determined until we get to the point we need to borrow the money. And we don't need to borrow the money probably until a year from now. At the moment, we have about 2.4 million in cash. So we'll be able to make great headway through a large part of the construction before we need to start borrowing. And as every pledge is paid, that immediately pays down the principal.
Mr. Clark?
I always support the senior center, but how is it possible that being on county property and paying zero rent, that nobody knew you had to pay prevailing wage and union wages?
The county completely negotiated our lease with us in 2018, and nobody brought it up. And it's only because there's a whole new staff at the county who apparently had
And nobody
better
had to pay
experience.
union wages.
No. Nope.
It was actually one of the reasons why, if I understand my history correctly, that we did not donate to the
Correct.
senior center more than a certain amount.
That's right.
Because it would have forced them into prevailing wage.
That's right. At the time, and I don't know if those facts are still the same, it was 2% of our total project costs. But those rules may have changed since then.
Mr. Mayor, I can just give a little bit of more historical context. I believe that the concern at the time was for the city to waive certain portions of the fees that it would charge for the project. And I did have some discussions, I believe, with Mr. Richardson about how that would implicate prevailing wage, because anytime you do either fee credits or reduced cost of services, it can be considered a public subsidy, which would then bring in
forces
prevailing
the
wage.
prevailing
The
wage.
2% number that she spoke of is kind of a rough rough number that the Department of Industrial Relations uses to determine whether or not it is a de minimis contribution to the project. And for the $60,000 that the city was looking at as a percentage of the entire cost at that time, it was de minimis. But the ask of providing the $450,000 that they're asking for now, or the reduced rent, it sounds to me like it was much more than a de minimis expense, and that's why prevailing wages come back up again.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the council? Let's go to public comment, and I have several requests for public comment. Let's start off with Jan Clevenger. Clevenger?
Good evening. My name is Jan Clevenger. I'm a 40-year resident of Solvang. I've lived and worked and volunteered, in this community for a very long time. I currently serve on the board of the Solvang Senior Center. Kathleen stole some of my thunder, however, I want to kind of personalize this. So tonight I'm here to talk about the importance of the Solvang Senior Center and why the city should contribute to the building fund. First of all, need. The Valley's 55-plus population, as you know, is continuing to grow, and some of those 55 and older people are actually coming back into town and taking care of their aging parents. So that population continues to grow. And this includes families from Lompoc, Santa Maria, Guadalupe, and Goleta. The Solvang Senior Center, this building is a place to go for support, activities, information, nutrition, and social engagement. What bigger need is there? The new community building will provide all groups, not just our seniors, with a place to come and be engaged in activities, information, nutrition, and social engagement. Now, the second piece is value. The Solvang Senior Center provides a safe and healthy environment where activities and social engagement create a sense of well-being for our active aging adults. And I can personally say that as an instructor, of course, of the powerful pedal power class, I witness on a weekly basis the power and the benefits of our activities. Chair yoga, pedal power, arthritis exercises, book club, painting, bridge, computer support, lectures on wellness, art tax preparation, field trips, and on and on. Where else will our seniors and current seniors go to get these kinds of services on an expanded basis? For my pedal power class, for example, which I invite you to come to Friday at 10:15 for 45 minutes, we travel the world. And here's what we do. We sit in chairs with stationary pedals and until they move. And then I pop in a video and we travel the world. What happens in that 45 minutes is that my seniors talk about their travel experiences or where they want to go, and they share stories. There's laughter, there's joy, there's friendship. And so just in that 45 minutes, in that small room, we travel the world. How cool would it be if we had twice as much room to travel the world? The value of physical, mental, well, okay, 2 minutes. And I just want one little tiny thing, and then I'll wrap up.
One little tiny thing?
One tiny thing. My mother came to the Valley at 80 years old. The Solvang Senior Center saved her, gave her purpose and value, a new social life, and friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul Matthews.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Infante, City Council members. I've lived in Solvang for 48 years. I've been a taxpayer for 48 years here, and I'm now a senior citizen. After I looked in the mirror and discovered that just the other day. If you look behind me, you'll see a few others in the room too. I'm here simply to endorse the senior center project, and I'm hoping that the council will consider the $450,000 that is needed to complete the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steve Brown?
Good evening. First, thank you for considering this request and hearing the comments from me and others. Also, I really want to thank the city of Solvang for its significant and ongoing support for the senior center and for all of us here in Solvang. I think it's really important, and I appreciate each one of you for your support and the ongoing support of the city. I first came to Solvang in 2013. I and my then partner had been on the road for 7 years, all over the country in our motorhome. We decided to come off the road and came this way to check out Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful town, and as a UC retiree, I thought UCSB would be a place to check out. We parked the motorhome for the summer at Flying Flags RV Park in Buellton and began exploring. Well, we fell in love with the valley, with Solvang, with the beauty, the quiet, the friendly people, the farmers market. We were hooked. So we settled into a home here in Solvang in 2014, and we parted in 2015, and I moved into an apartment near the library and senior center. New to town and rather brokenhearted, I decided to check out the senior center rather than simply mope around in my apartment. And it was a good decision. One of the first folks I met was Neil Volke, a truly amazing man I hope some of you know and met, and soon a good friend. He said often how coming to the senior center, becoming involved, had really saved his life when his wife passed. My story is similar. The senior center community and activities were and are an ongoing and important part of my life, my well-being. From Neil's cartooning class to Tai Chi, memoir writing, rides at Alisal Ranch, conversation groups, my Friday fish lunch. I'm not a good cook. The senior center is a very dear and sustaining community and presence for me. And I'm far from alone. Over and all, I've heard the same sort of story from others. However, like me, the building's getting old. I'm 80. And the building is too old and needs to be replaced. I think it's time we do that. We've worked hard to make that happen. I and many others have given what we can to cross the finish line. I hope the city will do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. James Clunan, followed by Ian Jacobson. Mr. Clunan? There you are.
Hold your breath. Good evening, Mr. Speaker and Councilman. I understand I've got 3 minutes and it's going to seem like 3 hours. I'm not used to speaking in front of people. But I can't say enough about the seniors and the senior citizen that make this work. In my occupation, I have seen people, seniors, that if they had this ability to do what they provide, I'm sure their lives would have been changed. I was a firefighter for 25 years here in Santa Barbara County. I've lived in the valley since '74. Please don't hesitate to ask me to do something, because I will try, even though I am somewhat handicapped now. But please don't let other people get left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Ian Jacobson, followed by C.J. Jackson.
Good evening. My name is Ian Jacobson, and I live at 618 Alisal Road. First, what I'd like to do is to thank you for serving on the City Council. I recognize that it's a time-consuming assignment, and you have to make a lot of tough decisions. And I wouldn't have the patience to do that. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you're doing this. So I'm here this evening to address you about the new senior center. If we're fortunate, we live long enough to become seniors. You can tell that I've been very fortunate. We have an opportunity to make a difference now in our community for at least the next 50 years. A new facility can enable an improved quality of life for the thousands of us who will participate in its programs and services throughout these years. Building a new senior center is not an expense, it's an investment. It's an investment in the quality of life that makes Solvang such a wonderful place to call home. I urge you to fund the requested amount. We have just celebrated the foresight of the founders of Theater Fest and invested a significant upgrade in it. Our current senior center is fully as decrepit as the old Theater Fest. By investing in a new facility now, our citizens will appreciate your foresight and resolve in the years to come. I would not ask you to invest in a new senior center if I had not prepared to do this myself. I've committed $50,000 to this endeavor. And for an old pensioner with modest means, this is a significant sum. It reflects my belief in the value of an active, thriving senior center as a crucial part of our community. Please join me and those who have made a significant financial commitment to a new senior center facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. Appreciate it. CJ.
Mayor, City Councilman, I thought I'd give you a slightly different perspective from Kathleen's pie chart. Her pie chart talks about foundations. I'm here representing the Ann Jackson Family Foundation. We took an interest in this project, and we are partners in it. And I'm encouraging those, but I thought I'd share with you what the heck did we see in this thing. First of all, if you haven't been elbowed by Willie Campbell, at some point you have not lived in Solvang. But just a couple of names: Nielsen, Anderson, Todd, Poles, Rasmussen. The history of this community building its own stuff, going to its own for general contracting services, is rife in this community. Historically, this community found a way to get things done. What else did we look at? Well, parties served. The distribution and penetration in the senior market in Solvang is magnificent. Hits a high percentage. Click that one. Percentage of board participation. We look at board participation before we make a grant, because if the board isn't participating, why the heck should we? Mark that one off. Look at the community participation. Look at the services donated, because the architectural services and much of the rest of this project donated by expertise of people involved and committed on multiple levels. Mark that one off. So this was not a hard grant to make. And the mix of that pie chart is probably invested somewhere in some foundation guidebook. Look for these. Also, you can't fail to note Kathleen, just like her mom, just as sore on my elbow. But when I moved here 28 years ago, the population of the San Ynez Valley was 23,000. I just looked at a recent survey, and the population is still 23,000. But the mix thereof has changed dramatically. I moved here with a young family. My family isn't as young as it used to be. The point is, the penetration of this facility has expanded along with the demographics that it supports, and it supports them effectively. This is a winner. This is one that, if you're going to make a grant, you touch a whole heck of a lot of bases here. On behalf of my family foundation, we were grateful to have the opportunity and the privilege to contribute to this. And I can only say I may join Kathleen, twist your arm a little bit, but let's see if we can do it.
Thank you, CJ. Do we have anybody else in-house that would like to speak on this subject? Yes, sir. Please come up and identify yourself.
My name is Bob Leahy.
Into the microphone, please. Sorry.
Yes. We moved here in 1976. We had two sons, 6 months and 2.5 years. They grew up here in the valley. They went to Los Olivos School. We lived in Los Olivos. I was on the school board while they were attending Los Olivos School. We realized very early that very few people get stuck in the Santa Ynez Valley. People choose to live here. And we realized why. Okay? So we felt give back to the community. So we pledged to help build the YMCA. We pledged to renovate Theater Fest. Okay? We have pledged to support the senior center. We moved to Solvang from Los Olivos in 2012, and so we've been here, a total of 47 years in the valley. So please consider supporting the senior center and continue to make the valley such a desirable place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We don't appear to... Yes, sir, please.
Thank you. Frank Smithson. I live in the Village Collection, which you choose to call us the Village People, and we'll live with that. A little over a year ago, we had a lot of heated discussions on Measure U, and it went to the vote, and the community chose to support Measure U. And if I read from the frequently asked questions, it does state in here, will Measure U address community identified spending priorities? And I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but at the very bottom, it states maintain senior and adult and youth recreation programs. Y'all got a good opportunity here to make us very proud of you. So if you would, do what you've always done and help the senior center out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Village People have spoken. We go back and forth on this.
He did mention the YMCA.
Oh, that. All right, moving right along. I don't see anybody on Zoom that looks like they have a comment, so we'll bring it back to the council. Final comments or a motion to...
Can I ask one question?
Return.
And maybe somebody in the audience can answer this. Has a contractor been chosen for the job yet? Thank you.
We have been using Chris Irikides from Irikides Building Construction. I want to get UBC right.
Yeah.
And we are planning to move forward to finalize our contract with him.
Thank you. The reason I say that is because the YMCA got donations from all over the valley, and they hired an out-of-town contractor. Theater Fest, donations from all over the valley, and they hired an out-of-town contractor. So I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Is there, have you allowed for contingency? Is there overrun built into your budget? And the reason I'm asking is just to, assuming we do this,
right,
that we don't have to, there's...
Do more, yeah.
The one-time ask.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Yes, and thanks to Chris Irikides in the audience. Part of our overall goal includes not only the contractor's contingencies, but our own contingencies. So that our unexpected things that come up, or the extra things, if everything is playing out well under budget, we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I guess my question is to Wendy in our audience, or what is our rate of return for the liquid investments that we put with the new company? I mean, I think what I'm trying to get at is, folks, is that I think everybody here wants to see this successful, and there's no question in my mind about the need, or anybody else's, I think. That's not the issue. It's how do we get there? That's the only question here is we have a gap of money. How do we get there? So these are a reason for my question. Thank you.
We actually haven't been able to transfer any funds because we have to go through the paperwork to switch the bank accounts, and that is a very lengthy process.
If the money's there, what was the rate that they said they would pay us for that?
4%.
4%. Would it be possible for, I mean, this is not precedent setting, because when we had COVID, we gave a lot of commercial businesses in the area free loans. And I'm thinking that that might be something we might consider at this juncture as well, as an option from the city surplus reserves that we have. And that's kind of where I'm headed with this, and I bring that to the table. See if that has.
Well, it's interesting. We have it's different questions about reserves, but the point right now that we're being asked for is to let the staff come up with an idea of how we do this. So the question before the council right now, as an alternative, is to direct staff to return at a future meeting with an equitable grant paperwork, along with the necessary budget adjustment for council approval, okay, of the requested amount in a one-time lump sum or smaller amounts, excuse me. So that's the options that we need to look at, is where we come from. It was brought up that we've got the Measure U money that has come in.
Well,
So
yeah,
there's
my thought process was actually as a $475,000 without interest for 10 years.
You're bringing up option 4, basically, is what you're doing.
I'm expanding our thinking here, if that's doable.
That would cost the city more money. Why don't we take advantage of the bank's offer, which is over 10 years at an interest rate that could be absorbed by the project? It functions like a pledge to the senior center, and it has minimum budget impact for us at roughly $45,000 a year.
And these are the options I want to give staff to evaluate. So what works? What fills that gap is what we're trying to achieve tonight. And with those options that are there, I just thought that ought to be part of the thought process.
Thank you. Good idea. So at this point, what I think we're looking for is a motion on which of the alternatives we'd like to have on how the staff would proceed with this idea.
Just one more question because there is an option as a one-time lump sum. Do we have that in today's budget, ignoring Measure U? Do we have that much excess in our budget?
We haven't received that entire amount yet of Measure U, but the projection is we should have it within the next couple of months.
Would prefer to use the Measure U coming process of oversight before we commit those dollars, because we've talked about using Measure U for sheriff contract that everyone knows was overrun. We just have too many earmarked ideas of how we would use that excess income. So I'd prefer to avoid that. We could probably revisit it later, and I don't think if we ended up coming up with a one-time lump sum payment, no one would object later after we get through into January our Measure U procedures and oversight. So to me, we could revisit that unless we have the money now.
I think that's why we need to give staff direction to look into this so that they can present us with those options. There is no question that the community wants this, and I see many of these folks, they've committed their own funds. They're working with their organizations to fund it. So it's fair that we look at all of the options to see, how we can make this happen.
Agree, and I totally want this to happen, but by the lump sum, you're asking the taxpayers that it's their job to pay union wages. That's basically what it is. And I don't like that at all. But I want to get a dollar amount to the point where we can get this done. And I like the way Dave brought that up. I think there's some creative ways. I'm okay with the dollar amount over time. But I think it's really tough on the taxpayers to go, okay, we have to pay union wages, so you need to give us $450,000. I don't like that. There's got to be a better way to do this.
Well, but they're getting, we've sidestepped a very expensive lease through help from the county, is my understanding. So, yes, there's, gives and takes in what the overall cost is, and we took advantage of everything we could, but we just gave away $560,000 for 18 months of something that was less measurable and vague impact. So,
Let me have the city manager make a present.
So I was just going to comment on a couple of things. In regard to using taxpayer dollars to pay union wages, that's done all over the country. Unfortunately, the prevailing wage, Davis-Bacon, I believe it's a federal law, and therefore every public works project, anything that's using public funds has to be paid with taxpayer dollars at prevailing wage, which is typically even higher than typical normal union scale. So it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. What I was going to ask council, kind of simplify this, it seems based on the conversation, there's a general willingness to provide the funding.
Yes.
But under what terms? Do they want to do it as a lump sum? Do they want to do it as spread out over 2 years, 5 years, over the 10 years? And that's the direction we're looking for. We can come back with, when we do come back, hopefully possibly at the next meeting, but certainly by the first meeting in December, with more specific terms, and again, what, if any, budgetary moves we would need to make this happen.
I personally like the idea of treating this like a grant and a forward pay grant earmarked in the budget, much like we treat Alverhoy or much like we treat Yule Fest, and treat it as a $45,000 predictable expenditure.
So you're talking
for the
about
next
10 years.
10 years, only because it keeps the dollar amount low, and we can revisit that when Measure U gets the proper review. So I'll make a motion to ask the staff to come back, give us the requisite grant paperwork with the necessary budget approval or adjustment to put it into this year's budget and the future 10-year budgets with the help from Montecito Bank so that the council can approve it.
Well, we don't need the help of Montecito Bank to do that.
Well,
That's just what they will use as a
What they will
basis,
use
as
to
collateral
treat it as
for
a
the loan.
pledge, yeah.
There's a staff conference going on. Just a moment. Yes, sir.
Another thought is that the city potentially could take the place of Montecito Bank and carry it and not charge interest at all. Is that, I don't know if that's a legal question. I don't know if the answer. But
So the question would be whether there's a gift to public funds in providing a 0% loan. We can make the sufficient findings to withstand that. Charter cities are also given significant discretion and leeway over how they expend their funds. So if the council were interested in doing that, it certainly could do that and make its own disbursements that way. But the direction to staff is, at least with the motion, is to come back with a budget adjustment for a 10-year payout. There may be other alternatives that we can do in that sense that don't need Montecito Bank involved in that. So if staff is given that direction, then we can come back with something more flexible for the council.
Well, the concern I have over that comment is if we were to give them a loan that went out 10 years, and we're only giving them $45,000 a year, they're going to build it before they get the money. They need the money to build first. So I don't think we can do that practically for them. I'm not the best finance
In that
person.
situation, what might be appropriate then is to have staff communicate with the senior center and figure out what mechanism will make sure that they can meet their goals, recognizing that the council is supporting the project but would like some budget predictability over a period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody is in sync with
Yeah, I
what
don't think
my
they are either.
idea was, but basically it was to fund it and fund our 400, or the full amount that they're asking for as a low or zero interest debt, and then they would make payments to us over the 10-year period.
That's kind of where I was going, using the promise of the pledges of everybody else.
I'm not even sure we need collateral, to be honest with you.
But Dave, we still have to ask the budget money, then do we have that money available now?
Well, that was my question to Wendy, if that
This
cash
is-
reserve was available.
And the other question, if you're structuring it as a 0% loan, you're implying that it would be paid back in some manner. If you're talking about a forgivable loan after a period of time or on a contingency, then it's more like a grant, and you may as well just call it a grant.
It's a grant, it's not a loan.
That's not what I was saying. The loan was what I had in mind, because it's a tax event, or taxpayers type of thing. I don't know. They're doing the same thing with Montecito Bank and Trust, just in a different way.
No, I don't think that's really the case. As
Okay.
I understand it, if we put up the $45,000 a year for 10 years, Montecito Bank will then lend them the $450,000 based on the collateral that the city has said we'll pay them every year.
So then we're taking out the loan.
Right, basically.
Mm,
And it's
The
paying
the
them
senior center's taking out the
collateral
loan.
for the loan.
because
with a collateral for the
interest
loan.
will hit their budget.
So this is, what I think we, let's go back to the motion. if
Everybody
I may.
wants this.
Well, there's a motion on the floor.
What we need is the staff to give us a couple of options based on, and this is, your motion was for a 10-year process?
Yep, as
Do
a
I-
grant.
Okay, do I have a second on that or an alternate or an approved?
I am fine with that. My only question is that if that modality of spreading it over 10 years helps them meet their goal, or if that hinders them, so.
Yes, that's the collateral for them to get the loan to do the construction.
But I think a motion of that nature also handcuffs our staff as to options that they might like to have or present, and have that conversation with the senior center, what works for them. That's, I
Okay.
find it limiting.
So we have a motion. If there's no second, or it'll die for a lack of a second, if there's no second, then we need another motion.
Well, do we need a motion, or do we just need to give them direction? I feel like the motion ties them to
Motion
do
for
it
the options.
specifically this way. Whether, if we give direction, then they'll come back and present
But that's
more.
what we need to move, a motion on, right, Dave?
Well, I think we on staff want to be clear what council's goals are in this situation, because I hear almost unanimously, I'll say unanimously, that council wants to support
wanna
the
do it.
project. The non-unanimous is how much of an impact on the annual budget for a period of X years. I've heard Mayor Pro Tem Arona say 10 years, 45,000 per year, predictability for 10 years. I haven't heard a lot of discussion about a shorter term, longer term, lump sum. So staff kind of needs direction as to what the council's inclination is as a consensus. I've heard each of you have different things on that.
Do we do this as a motion or just the consensus?
Well, if you can come to consensus, that'll be clear to staff what we're bringing back.
Okay. As a consensus, then I will offer this to the council, that we ask the staff to give us both 10 years, 5 years, and one time. Those three options to take a look at the next council meeting.
Did
But-
council
but-
members, Rona, excuse me, her motion die due to lack of second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what's the difference? It's really, you could do the math right now. Make another motion then.
Part of it
I want
has
to
to
do
do
5
with-
years because
Well, I was-
what I understood is they need quickly to resolve this so we could come back with grant paperwork if we get to clarity of action, and then they can proceed quickly with the development.
Staff is
I can see
asking
it.
for it. So,
I see it.
right.
5 at 90 sounds better.
5 years, 90,000 a year, is that what you're saying?
Great, make a motion.
I'll make a motion to 5 at 90.
I'll second it.
All right. Everybody, actually, we just need an agreement, I think, rather than a motion, but if everybody agrees with 5 and 90?
Well,
Yes?
I'd like, after they have a conversation with the senior center, I'd like to see if there's other options available. I mean, let's evaluate it, but I don't want to take anything else off the table.
And what I would
Okay.
suggest in that
I'm not-
regard is we have direction, it sounds like consensus, 5 at 90.
Right.
We would
Yeah.
obviously check with the senior center to make sure that that meets their goals and that there's no inhibition of their funding as a result of that. If there is, we can bring it back and say, they have let us know through that process
Can't
that
do
there
it.
will be an issue. We would recommend a slight change to that. But at least we have direction to start that process, recognizing that council supports the project and wants a period of time as opposed to one lump sum at this
Right.
juncture. So that's,
That-
that's what I'm hearing as far as the council consensus. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Everybody
And you
agree?
have a second on the motion, so. I think we need to vote.
And you could make it a formal vote if you'd like to do that.
Everybody said yes, so that's good enough where it's a staff direction.
Okay.
right?
Okay.
All right.
We understand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yay. Okay, so let's move on to item 6C, please. Madam Clerk, if you would introduce that item while
Discussion
everybody
and possible
departs.
action to provide direction to staff regarding outdoor dining process in the public right-of-way.
Okay. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're listening, Raphael.
Okay. For you this evening is staff report.
No one else is, but we are.
Hang on a second. Let's just
Yeah, I will.
let the din subside.
Yeah, it really is.
It's not going to hurt us.
You know how that is.
Yeah? Oh. Yeah. Peter Wright. He's not here. You going to see him? Thank you.
Or Mayor and council members. For you is an item that was previously brought to you back in June of this past year from the previous planning manager in regards to outdoor dining in the public right-of-way. At that meeting, you had directed city staff to go ahead and provide some options for you to review and then give further direction to staff onto potentially codifying a future ordinance and bringing that back to you for review and approval. So I don't know if you can see my PowerPoint.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So in your staff report, we went over a few sort of categories here. Eligibility, city staff reviewed other ordinances throughout the state, specifically Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Paso Robles, in regards to what is working for their jurisdictions, and that's how some of these are derived back, and also from just viewing what we're doing today here in Solvang. So part of the eligibility would be ground floor businesses in what's known as the tourist, the TRC zone. City staff listed a number of streets, including Copenhagen, Atterdag, 2nd Street, 1st Street, Alisal, 1st Place, and 4th Place. But we also did mention that we would also be open to potentially just saying every street of the TRC as long as they meet some sort of minimum standard criteria, which I'll get into in the next slide. So there are basically two types of sidewalk dining that are within the city and within most jurisdictions. Type 1 is sidewalk dining that's just table and chairs. So we actually do have a few businesses here in the TRC that they set out tables and chairs. Some of them take them in or take them in when they close. Others just leave them out piled on the sidewalk. These businesses have existing encroachment permits to do this outdoor dining. The second one is sort of this idea of having permanent structures in the right-of-way. So those are technically barriers that are utilized differentiate or separate the dining area from the sidewalk. And those barriers could be done just, again, to improve flow of traffic, but they're mainly utilized for the alcohol beverage control or ABC licensure to ensure there's a clear separation between the public area and the liquor licensure area. So that's, again, those are more permanent structures that define that area and define the realm of the sidewalk seating versus the sidewalk. So city staff looked at a number of operating standards that are sort of fair practice from most of these jurisdictions. That includes tables located directly in the front of business. These tables could extend out, tables and chairs could extend out to neighboring businesses as long as there's ownership permission from the neighboring business owner and or property owner that allows for those tables to extend out. A required minimum clearance of 4 feet on sidewalks that are 8 feet or less, and then 6 feet for sidewalks that are greater than 8 feet. So we do have a couple street segments that actually have larger sidewalks. So again, kind of recognizing that we do have quite a few walkers in the TRC and larger groups, having that sort of wider buffer for the ability to accommodate the bigger sidewalk space would be greatly appreciated. And then requirement to ensure site plans are completed. We would provide guidance through handouts of how to complete a site plan. It wouldn't necessarily need an architect, but as long as we're able to review ADA accessibility and California Building Code requirements, at least making sure that they're complying with those items. The larger one is indemnification liability release agreements to be signed by these businesses. Again, we're utilizing the public right-of-way or sidewalk that we maintain, so ensuring that we get at least some sort of indemnification completed as a part of any sidewalk dining program. And then standards for barriers used for permanent outdoor dining and seating, as indicated in your staff report. City staff would like to actually work with the DRC in establishing these standards. So what that means is we vet what we think would be a good standard for barriers, but at the same time getting input from the DRC and the Planning Commission, et cetera, and then coming back to you with those standards. That kind of sets us up so that way we can fully go through a permitting process that has known outcomes. That's one of the bigger things I'm trying to establish here is providing known outcomes for business owners, for property owners, for developers. The more known outcomes we can establish, the easier permitting processes become, and then the less red tape we are able to produce. So there are a couple outstanding issues that we did have that are in your staff report. The first one is parking. As you know, parking is a very huge issue here in the city, along with other municipalities. So currently in our municipal code, it does allow for a waiver of up to 2 parking spaces. However, sort of noting that if a restaurant does choose to have outdoor dining in a sidewalk, that does create an increase in number of tables, which thereby technically increase the additional parking needs. So city staff, we're requesting some direction on some of the following items, specifically parking. What we could do is review for parking on all applications, determine if parking's not met, charge our in lieu fee, which is currently $12,376 per space. So again, that makes it very equitable for everybody. We're reviewing based on your site plans that are provided to us, whether or not you trigger additional parking, we would charge a parking in lieu fee, and that would be on top of any other permitting processing as a part of the sidewalk dining. The second one is to allow staff to authorize the waiver that is currently in the municipal code. So again, up to 2 spaces, it's already codified. At this point, it says planning manager, decision, but again, with the council direction, any sidewalk dining program, we can codify that it is automatically given. And then finally, require an in lieu fee for permanent structures. Again, recognizing that the permanent structures are built on the sidewalk, they're not going to be moving, whereas tables and chairs, very seasonal. Some restaurants will only choose to do this during the summer and springtime or even fall and decide to not use them during the winter. So again, not necessarily penalizing those with tables and chairs and try not to penalize, but again, looking at the structures as being much more permanent and prominent. And then finally, any other alternatives that we're open for discussion on that. The second area that we wanted some additional council input is maintenance. Again, the maintenance is an ongoing issue for dining versus pedestrian use. So currently, we are maintaining our sidewalks as much as we can and possible. But again, we as city staff recognize that if a private business entity is taking a portion of the sidewalk away, the question becomes who's actually maintaining those. That's a part of our existing issued encroachment permits. That question sort of remains ambiguous. So we would like to, again, have a known outcome for any of our business owners to understand that if they're going to enter into a future sidewalk dining program, the outcome is that they would at least be responsible for a portion of the maintenance. So one direction is require businesses and or property owners to enter an agreement with the city for upkeep and any required replacement of the section of sidewalk they are utilizing. So again, that's a part of the site planning, that's a part of our ability to look during a permit processing portion, and then determining what type of agreement we can enter into. The second one is establishing what's called a per square foot rental fee. The city of San Luis Obispo is actually doing this, and that goes towards the maintenance of the space to completed by city staff. So again, it's an ongoing maintenance, but it's a rental of the space, again, recognizing that they're renting the space from the public, but it is a private entity. In order to do that, a fee study and or justification fees would need to be completed. So that would elongate the process that we have ongoing that trying to complete. And then not alluded to in these slides is sort of what type of process would you like to have for sidewalk dining? And we alluded to a couple processes, whether it's by right. That's where I mentioned having standards in place would allow for sort of a by right process, which allows for them a much, not by right, but a much quicker, expedient process, either through what's called a temporary use permit, which will allow an applicant to say they only want to do tables and chairs during the summer and fall because it's their busiest time, and then we can basically expire that encroachment if it's approved, and then they would reapply. This actually is really helpful for business owners who are trying to sort of test the waters for this type of outdoor dining use, because it's not as simplistic as one thinks, simply because there's the wait staff issue, is getting people trained, and then does it actually make money, et cetera. So having a temporary use permit process that's approved by city staff would, again, having those standards would help out a lot. The second one alluded to was called a development application or development permit. Again, it's a city staff approval, but it's a little bit more, not erroneous, but just a little bit more detail that we're going to need from the property owners. And then finally, there's the conditional use permit, as most of you understand, is they would go apply for that use permit, which is upwards of $3,000, go before a planning commission, and it essentially becomes an entitlement. It runs with the lay of the land. So those are sort of the three flavors that we're proposing, but if you would like to weigh in on that process, that would be greatly appreciated. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you have of the staff report.
Questions? Yes, sir.
A rental fee in addition to an in lieu parking fee?
Yeah, that would be it. I mean, again, these are options. The city of San Luis, has. Don't quote me on this. I don't believe if they have a in lieu fee. I'm almost certain that they do, and they do charge a rental fee. But again, it can go up. I mean, the downside of the rental fee is we would have to do a study. Whereas if we enter into an agreement, it's a different story. We can quantify that. We can get businesses quickly up and running in a program as long as they enter into agreement. It's signed off by the city attorney, and the party sign off to the maintenance of that.
Okay, would a specific restaurant need more than one in lieu fee? Would a specific restaurant, if he's going to put 5 tables on the sidewalk, would he need more than one in lieu?
Yes, it's the.
So he's going to pay $45,000 to put a couple tables out on the sidewalk?
Potentially, yes, but again, we have to analyze what their existing parking requirements are and then comparative to what the new tables are today. Because again, that's an option that's available. It's not saying that we have to go there, but it is an option that can be made available based on our parking in the.
But Raphael, do we have like a proportionality or a ratio? So a business could predict how much they would pay in lieu, or how much parking would be required if they added 1 table or 5 tables?
And so currently we have parking standards. It's one parking space per 300, and then there's an employee aspect of it as well.
Per 300, sorry, 300 what?
Square feet.
Oh, 300 square feet, okay, thank you.
Okay,
so you would add the square footage?
Correct.
Got it.
It's a basic enumeration that's completed, which we would do standard for any new business and any new project. So it's the same process. We take a look at their floor plan. It's actually their net area, so we actually deduct out the kitchen space, et cetera, and then we ask for an estimate of the number of employees as well. So some of them might trip it, some of them won't, but again, that's an option to the council. And currently built into the ordinance is already a waiver of up to 2 spaces that the planning manager can do.
Okay, so just to clarify, what triggers paying in lieu of parking fees? Is it the amount of tables, the size of the place? Is it a change of use?
So any intensification of a use would typically require a review of your parking. And so therefore, if you increase the number of tables, in theory, you're therefore increasing the number of occupants that could be in the space, thereby increasing your parking requirements.
At this time, is there any oversight as to when restaurants add or subtract tables and those intensify their use? Or is that something that it's only done when they first apply?
It's typically only done with their first apply, but the number of tables is regulated by the fire department when they do fire inspections. So, you know, and additionally, it's business practices as well. You can't just put, a space that's meant for about, 10, 15 tables. You can't pack them all in because then you can't have a hostess and wait staff go through there. And then it's just infeasible for most restaurateurs to go through that process of packing them in unless they don't have the staff to wait the tables.
There's ways to use less staff. You have somebody order at a counter rather than have waiters go to the table. So I'm
Right.
just wondering how that oversight happens.
And then there's actually a whole counter, parking ratio as well. So we've thought it through, at least parking-wise, from that aspect. But typically in a restaurant business, that's how that works. And I'm only saying this from knowledge because my father-in-law runs a restaurant, so that's typically what goes through their head and through my daughter's head as she works there as a waitress, et cetera.
Well, we have so many bakeries in town that don't provide table service. So it seems that we should classify the type of business that's requesting the outdoor dining, whether they have table service and they're going to have wait staff crossing the sidewalk, for example, or carrying food, or if they're just providing outdoor seating that doesn't have table service with it.
And we most certainly can, as part of this ordinance, we can always also, you can direct staff to revise and add to the parking, and we can take a look at best practices for that type of use, because that is indicative of some business models that there is no wait staff, but they do provide tables.
Well, I think classification would be good because we also have, wine tasting rooms that people would stay longer if they could be outside enjoying the weather, especially in the summer, with people who serve ice cream or able skeevers, and sitting outside is going to, I think, promote Solvang in a great way. So if we could help give the businesses something more predictable, almost a template, or even a pre-design of what their table seating could look like if they're a service restaurant, table service restaurant, if they're just outdoor seating, or if they're a winery and they're, not bringing heavy food out across the sidewalk.
Conversely, another option is you can direct staff to just consider the outdoor dining portion ancillary, particularly if it's tables and chairs that they come in and out, and just assume that what is already parked is going to be sufficient.
Well, there's one more thing, we should be really careful that the businesses that do serve, that have already established themselves with their business license as a food service entity, and we don't have tables and chairs all over Solvang for no obvious reason.
How many places currently have outdoor tables and chairs?
We have quite a few along Mission Drive, but however, they're sitting on private property, so I'm going to focus on the ones that are currently on public, and those are 2 right now.
Which ones are those?
Those are the Red Viking, and forgive me if I don't remember the names, and I believe it's the...
Raphael, you put 3 in the packet. It's Danish Mills, Red Viking, and Solvang.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I remember.
Solvang Restaurant.
I'm going to eventually get my restaurant correct.
It's okay. Helping you out.
It takes time.
Still don't know all the streets.
But it is 3, and currently, like I said, they're currently taking the chairs in and out. So I mean, it's not many.
Are they cleaning the sidewalks?
No, they're not.
Yeah, so that's a problem we have, and that's one of the things that's been proposed to add into the events approval. is the cost of cleaning the sidewalks, because we're doing pressure washing underneath trash cans. There's just a mess in some places after certain events.
Seems like a simple remedy to tell a business owner, clean up your tables.
Well, it's not the tables.
Around the tables.
It's the permanent, it's where the trash cans are bolted into the
Okay,
concrete and the benches that are bolted into the concrete. People come out with food and they leave wrappers and junk all over after a big event. I went through it with the Viking
I know,
car show.
did it Sunday night,
Yeah.
putting trash, it was full, yeah.
So, anyway, that's a thought. Randy?
Because I stepped out, I'm not sure Raphael covered this, but one of the things that have to be considered is these restaurants are using public property for the benefit of their business.
Yeah.
And there are liability potential issues there. There are other things. And so I know it's distasteful to charge a fee for them, but they are profiting by the use of public property if they're using their tables and chairs on the sidewalk. Other jurisdictions have them actually taking up parking spaces for that, depending on the width of the sidewalk. So that's as unpalatable as it might be. That's something that needs to be considered.
Are we currently taking up any parking spaces with outdoor dining?
Not in Solvang.
No.
Okay.
And I just have one more question in regards to the Leon parking fee, because if we tell a business, this is the parking that you're expected to take on that you're not providing yourself, so we're gonna bill you for this much, it seems weird to be charging them an X amount of money for every parking space that supposedly they need when I don't recall if we went over our in lieu of parking fee policy where it says we're charging this much because we provide this certain amount of parking spaces, or we are planning on building certain amount of parking spaces.
That's the point of the parking in lieu fee, is to collect funds. To collect funds, and eventually those funds go to obtain or improve existing parking.
Okay.
Sure they do.
We don't have any
just
parking
think
and lieu
that-
fees funds left, do we?
That I do not know.
Yeah, like, I don't think we have a cohesive plan right now to even make parking happen. So what are we charging money for a program that we are not implementing in the foreseeable future?
That's true.
Plus, they will come and argue, well, people walk to our location, they're not parking nearby to,
Oh, in lieu is the third rail.
yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
When was the last time we collected an in lieu parking fee? And that's not stupid, I'm curious.
I don't know. I'm going to play my new card out, and I don't know. But what I do know is we do have items in our queue, as in development applications.
Correct. On new stuff, I understand.
The new stuff that very much they are going to be committed to paying
Correct.
fees. So
Hotels, things like that, yes.
That is correct.
Mr. City Manager, do you remember, have we charged anybody in lieu fee in the last, since you've been here?
Not since I've been here that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean we're not. I just don't know about it.
Understood, thank you.
As I understand it, all of our parking and lieu fee funds were used for parking lot 5 across the street, that way. So we don't have any parking and lieu funds left. Wendy, you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong. But the idea was that we would collect them and use them for double decking and expanding parking lots and things of that nature.
Yeah, in which case, I don't think that $12,000 pays for one single parking space.
30 of them.
Okay.
Double-decker parking garage cost.
But
Well, we need to revisit the parking and lieu program, that's clear.
Yeah, that needs some correction. One of the concerns I have also, we looked at this during the COVID crisis when we were letting people put stuff out in the streets. The Cal Cities specialist made a presentation about putting bollards or something when you put a car facing into those tables. I think the story they told us was the 7-Eleven stores have somebody drive in through the front window every couple days because they forget and put it in drive instead of reverse. And so that all the 7-Eleven stores now are putting on the big bollards so you can't drive into the window anymore. That's a security, a safety, there's a lot of those kinds of concerns. And actually, I think, isn't there a law that requires that we block the cars from them?
I don't believe there's a law per se, but again, in the street design itself, there's a curb, and while a curb's not going to stop anybody,
right?
There is an issue, and that's something that we as city staff will have to take a look at if we green light the ability to do the sidewalk dining. And again, we currently do have 3 users that put those tables right on the curb today.
Do you think that's a liability to the city?
Oh,
or-
yeah, big time.
It is, because
Big time.
would that be true for pedestrians too?
I would assume so, wouldn't it?
Why
If
would
they
it
jump
be
the
the
curb and
city's
hit a
liability?
pedestrian?
Why is it?
I'll jump in on the liability issue.
Please do.
If it's considered a dangerous condition of public property where the city had notice and had an opportunity to fix it, then liability can stem from that. The mere fact of an accident doesn't necessarily mean that the city is automatically liable. There's a little bit more that goes into it than that.
But the design that, I think I know what you referred to, the 7-Eleven, the design is very different because the car has a way to drive directly into it. There's no curb, there's no
There is,
side.
there's a parking curb.
It's
It looks
different,
like
it's not a
stairs.
street curb, it's a 4-foot
Yeah.
bump. Yeah, bumper.
But like he said, the curbs aren't going to stop a car. You put it in drive and you press the pedal,
I
and
guess
you're going to go up
the
over that
question is
curb.
really, have we created a dangerous condition by letting people sit close to the curb?
I'll let you answer that.
I don't know. That's the answer. I would chunk to say no, but again, we would have to take a look at it from a site planning perspective, and that's why we're asking for direction to, if we're going to go through this process, that there's a application process put forward so that city staff can review the site plan to ensure those items.
Well, maybe that's one of the requirements that can be, tables need to be away a certain distance from the sidewalk, and if you
But then they
can-
won't have enough room to put the table there.
Well, if it's not safe to put tables outside, then it's just not safe to put tables outside.
There may be some
That's my
businesses
point.
we have to deny based on their application and based on our criteria.
There was, in June, there was a discussion of equity. And just like you had mentioned, is some businesses just won't qualify because they don't have the minimum criteria available for them to put sidewalk dining. That's it. I'm sorry. But, as I tell my
Find a
13-year-old,
location that lends
that's
itself
life.
for that kind of environment, if that's what you want for your business.
Well, but the other question too is, doesn't ABC have a control over whether you are allowed to put a table out on the sidewalk?
Only if they're serving alcohol. And again,
Well,
that's
it's
if-
the wineries,
Winery, well, not just wineries, it's also
Well, any of the
restaurants,
restaurants
et cetera.
serving
And again,
alcohol.
that's a whole different process where they have to amend their existing licensure. ABC has a minimum set criteria of barriers that need to be established, et cetera. So the safety issue, that's a part of barriers. That's something that city staff will have to go through the motions if we're going to greenlight an ordinance, that we get back with the city attorney, we get back with Public Works, and we ensure that if we do greenlight sidewalk dining an ordinance, that we try to cover those marks of safety and address those potential concerns that you have all have brought up.
Okay.
So I just have 2 other areas I want to make sure we hit on, then I would think you potentially have enough direction. The walk space at maximum is going to be 4 feet then, based on the bullets that you put up?
Minimum 4.
Minimum.
But there's that,
Minimum. Okay, and do we have examples already in the city where there's walk space that's only 4 feet?
No, but some of the restaurants that were asking for that, there is areas that is going to be just over 4, especially if they're going to be right by the curb. But again, we would have to see a site plan to see if it actually all works. But most of particularly on Copenhagen, there's plenty of space to get it done. There'll be other streets that there may not be enough sufficient space.
On one side of the street, where the 8-foot sidewalks are, because the other side of the street, I don't think we have that room, do we?
There's one that's 10. That's
Oh,
why.
is it really?
Yes. Yeah, I had this lovely conversation with Roger about this.
Okay.
The reason I'm bringing that up is I think it might be interesting if you take a look at what could be predefined or pre-designed or even pre-approved for, a bakery or a table service restaurant or an ice cream parlor, for example. Just something where people are going to sit and have a cup of coffee and they don't require a ton of space. But you might be able to, encourage more outdoor dining development or extensions of the businesses that are in Solvang to just drive more business and get people out and stay longer. And the second thing I would say is, I think we're okay charging a fee for that because they are using public space. I don't think we should deliberate over that too much, that they're getting extra opportunity for business. We would maintain the sidewalks and cleanliness and the standards for keeping Solvang, inviting.
Yeah.
And then we should charge a fee for that.
Here's
Okay.
a question.
Sure.
There are certain places, eating places that don't have tables and chairs, but have benches. The benches have no tables. Are we gonna be talking specifically about tables or chairs? Could they just put benches and that doesn't trigger the outdoor dining?
We have Solvang TV trays.
Well, we're tables and chairs or bar space, somewhere where you sit down that's directly in front of a business to eat, whether it's waited on or not. That's something that we could flesh out. As far as benches go, I mean, most benches are public. They're I can buy a pretzel, and what I have done, and sat down and eaten somewhere else. So I don't think we're specifically asking or requesting benches per se. So because those tend to just, by nature, be more open.
The point is, though, are those benches in the 4-foot liability area, okay? Because they're gonna go all the way out, so there's 4 feet left. And then there's a bench, and then there's a tree, okay? And you get behind a mom with a stroller and 2 dogs, you'll be in the street trying to get around them, okay? So I'm just saying that those are valid issues. So are we going to, and maybe we wouldn't have this conversation if we made Copenhagen a promenade and didn't have. Okay? That's another can of worms. But
That's close Copenhagen. What do you think, Mr. Mayor?
the fact is, though, that is that part of that 4 foot when you have benches and chairs and things of that nature? Because most of those benches are between the trees.
So 4 foot clear is 4 foot clear. It's you got to have enough space at 4 feet, not an encroachment into it, not a barrier that's into it. It's got to be 4 foot clear.
Okay. So the 4 foot would be clear of benches or trees?
Correct. It's a
And what
ADA
about,
issue. It's amongst other things.
What about existing businesses that, for maintenance, for the cost and things of that nature, that have quote-unquote been grandfathered in?
Well, they're not grandfathered in, so I'll leave it at that. But no, there is no maintenance whatsoever. And so that's why we brought that issue up, is understanding that this is public space. They are running a private enterprise on public space. So how we treat the maintenance of that public space that they're utilizing for their own private profits is a question before you.
I think that's an opportunity to normalize and get everybody treated, the same for those folks who are using public space for their table service today.
Yeah, but there's.
So maintenance fee, license fee, whatever we call it, applies to everyone.
Yeah, I understand that. But the maintenance fee itself might be different by virtue of the use, by virtue of
Size.
how much
Yeah.
city space is in front of it.
Well, it's a square foot.
Square foot.
Per square foot.
Square footage, but what I'm saying is, a jewelry store isn't gonna pay as much of a maintenance fee as a retailer that serves food, because they don't have near the trash in front of them.
Well, they're not going to put a table out at the jewelry store.
Well, It doesn't matter. I said jewelry
Oh,
store.
goodness gracious.
Goodness.
Can we make this more complicated?
I'm just trying to make
It's just a couple of chairs on a freaking sidewalk.
Okay.
No, this is.
Let's
this
just
is,
cancel the whole thing. This is ridiculous, you guys.
This is, the city's asked for direction.
How overboard can we go on this? I apologize, everybody.
They gave you a really good example that Santa Barbara has. I thought it was great
Let's just cancel the
material.
whole thing then. This is too much work.
It's,
Okay, down, everybody.
The only other thing I would say.
Let's,
For a couple of chairs on
Provide
a sidewalk.
let's see if there's any public comment on this. Does anybody want to speak to this?
You just stayed till 3 in the morning.
Yes, sir. Please come up and speak to us.
Well, I'll speak briefly. I see all sorts of spaces on Copenhagen.
Please introduce yourself
Oh,
first.
Steve Brown.
Thank you.
And I'm just here, I'm just interested in this meeting, so yeah, I'll comment. I drive in and out of Solvang all the time. I live here in town. I eat here in town. And there are all sorts of parking spaces. There are angle spaces and parallel spaces. And the parallel spaces, for instance, in front of the Belgian Cafe, are not the risk that the angled spaces are across the street in front of Abelskivers, I think. So there's a different risk. There are different sorts of spaces. I think there are at least half a dozen different places to have on Copenhagen and on Alisal at the head of Copenhagen. I know of one place on Mission where actually there's a tree and there's maybe 3 feet of space between the tree and the street. So I don't know whether that's a problem, but maybe that's grandfathered in. Anyway, that's my comment, that there are lots of different spaces. And and Belgian Cafe has, I would say, six or 8 tables and maybe 20, 25 people there on a Saturday morning. So that's a significant thing for them. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I think generally the businesses have been asking for this, right, guys?
Yes, they have. And again, I hear this and I look at it from a business perspective, trying to make this as uncomplicated as possible, but at the same token, recognizing that there are some issues that we would need to sort of get a handled on. Because most certainly, it checks the boxes. We have beautiful weather. We have a knockout village that anybody on any given day would love to just walk and stroll into. And that it is just ripe for that type of activity.
That's very European.
And so how do we harness that energy in a very straightforward shot as possible to not encumber a business owner who's already putting themselves out there as a business owner, has already put in the blood, sweat, and tears as part of it. But again, recognizing that there are a couple items that we do need to somewhat make it equitable for every other person that uses that space.
Okay, we've got no more public comment at this time, so we'll bring it back for the council to make a motion. Now, what we're being asked for is literally direction.
Raphael, do you have another topic that you need more direction on, or did we give you enough to work on?
The parking would be, I mean, again, we can come back with options for sure. But again, the code already has an option of waiving up to 2. And you could direct staff, we're going to use that as is. We've already been using it. It's already been caked in our code. At one point in time, a council thought of this, hence why they baked the exception. That's one, when I look at a code like that, that's what that tells me is 5 folks have sat up here and thought about that exception, hence why it's baked in there. Or again, make it or again, charge the in lieu fee to collect future funds for future parking needs, or another direction. And as far as maintenance goes, again, we can come back with a per square foot, we can come back with a per square foot. We can take a look at it, but again, there's a fee study that goes with that. Conversely, entering into an agreement that that the city manager and the city attorney can help template out, and that is clear and concise of what is expected of you to maintain that portion, whether it's power washing weekly, et cetera. The council can also set up what those expectations are in a direction to city staff versus coming back with a fee that we have to then go get a consultant for and do an RFP for, et cetera.
Well, the one thing I wouldn't want, personally, and we'll talk with the rest of the council, is taking up parking spaces. We don't have enough parking, period.
Right, and this ordinance won't do that.
Okay.
We're not going into the street.
Yeah, no, we're
And
not
really-
going into the
really
street.
introduce the liability.
Then, okay, so we have, you, go ahead,
I'm
David.
just going to say, just take the feedback you've gotten from us today and utilize that to,
Well,
if
one,
you've
just
gotten enough.
on that last point about, I think you made it on, for the maintenance, we should keep ownership of that and charge additional fees for, power washing,
I agree.
because it keeps the standard high, and we don't have to, remind repeatedly an offending business who isn't getting it done. Right?
Or how about this? If they don't keep the street clean, then their privilege just goes away.
Well, the question becomes then, what's clean?
Can we hire a consultant?
Yeah, and who owns the burden?
What do you think?
I like the idea of charging a per square foot rate, and we take care of
And
it.
then we just
That
take
way,
care
we
of
know
it.
exactly what the standard is.
And it's scheduled, pre-scheduled, and the businesses knows when it's happening. They,
We could look into how I can work with Randy and finance to look into it and try to make, again, a process that try to build one that's already what we have. But it seems like I have clear direction there on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Yes, sir?
Because we have somebody here to help on item F, I request the council to move that last item forward so we can allow him to go home and enjoy the rest of his evening.
Okay.
yeah.
Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Bring up, yes. So we'll go to item 6F.
We're going to be here till Wednesday anyway.
Getting there. Discussion and possible action to authorize the city manager to execute a cost-sharing agreement among members of the Eastern Management Area.
Staff report.
So, yeah, the state requires the county to monitor groundwater basins via the new recent legislation called the Groundwater Sustainability Act. And Solvang is in the eastern management area of Santa Barbara County. We currently share the oversight of the EMA Eastern Management Area via a memorandum of agreement with three other governmental agencies: Santa Barbara County Water Agency, the Santa Ynez River Water Conservation District, and Irrigation District Number 1. Four entities have been working together for the past several months to create a JPA, Joint Powers Agreement, that would govern the Eastern Management Area with the ultimate goal to operate as a separate entity with representatives from each of the four current agencies, along with the possibility for representation from a member of the ag industry. Unfortunately, the MOA lacks specificity regarding sharing of expenses. The operations folks of the four entities that I just mentioned, including Pedro Garcia out here in the audience, have come up with this cost-sharing agreement. The county has agreed to be the lead regarding contracting the vendors specifically in this instance for the annual report that is required by the Groundwater Sustainability Act, but they need a cost-sharing agreement. And as I pointed out, the MOA currently does not provide that specificity. So I'm requesting that the council authorize me, the city manager, to sign this agreement. And as I pointed out, fiscal impact is unknown. Most costs are expected to be reimbursed via grants and/or pumping charges that have yet to be levied. And I've asked Peter to be here to answer any questions that I am unable to do so. So with that, we're looking for questions from council.
Council? Okay. Then you have some? I've got a few. Go ahead. You're first. It's up to you.
My curiosity is with the cost and what the expectations and what percent of sharing are we talking about? Is it an equal number of people? Is it pro rata for the water we use?
Well, the agreement as currently proposed is 25% for each of the four agencies. So, for instance, the annual report that needs to be submitted here very soon, I believe it's $60,000 estimate we've got roughly, so it would cost us $15,000 There are other things, other reporting that needs to be done. There has to be a study done to determine what the cost should be for as a pumping charge. There is a $5 million grant that has been received that will be used to reimburse most, if not all, of these costs, but the money has to be spent first. So in some respects, we're loaning this GPA, pre-GPA group the money to get these things done. But as was discussed earlier about Sacramento, they've mandated us to do these things, and we're required to do it. And this is just a way to help share the cost, get it in writing that all four agencies will split the costs equally. And Peter can provide more explanation if somebody opts out, what happens then. Because it's not a majority. It has to be unanimous on the spending, so.
So Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, this really streamlines the process because in the MOU, which is all we have that creates the agency formation of the Eastern Management Agency, it's silent on this issue of cost sharing. So this makes it more definitive. It clearly makes it evenly spread at 25% each for the 4 members. And it allows us to move forward on things like rate study, metering, cost analysis, and basically administrative costs, no cost for water.
But this is set up currently for a 2-year period.
2 years, it can be extended. Or
Can
if we
it-
have the JPA in place.
That's my
there's not a
next
need for it
question.
any longer, yeah.
If we get a JPA, or we put a 5th member, or we do a non-voting, who pays how much, all of that is to be determined?
Yeah, and I'll just give you a quick update on that. We're meeting on Friday to discuss the current iteration of the JPA agreement. I will say we've made what I would consider is fantastic progress in coming to agreement on that, that protects Solvang's interests. Peter can probably chime in on that as well because he's seen it from both sides. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to bring back a JPA agreement that will have staff's recommendation.
And at that point in time, is it possible that we're going to redistribute the cost impact?
That is a discussion that still remains to be finalized. We were focusing all our efforts on trying to figure out the governance structure of the JPA.
Right.
I think once that's more clearly defined, I think the rest of it will probably fall into place much more easily. So it's, I guess, stay tuned would be the best way to put it.
Well, but Dave, clarify, this is an interim agreement, and when, at whatever time frame, the JPA becomes, final and executed, it would replace this agreement, is that correct?
We could certainly have them work in tandem. The JPA agreement could make reference to the cost-sharing agreement. I've just recently put together a JPA in another context that did that because the agencies didn't want to reinvent the wheel. They were happy with the cost-sharing approach. But in this particular situation, we are looking at the potential of adding at least a non-agency member to the governance board. And so that will have some discussions about how that entity, whoever it ends up being, will contribute to the costs. And that would require either an amendment to the cost-sharing agreement to add that entity or perhaps just bake it back into the JPA agreement. We haven't gotten that far on the discussions yet, though.
So this is an interim, basically?
It's something that in the absence of a JPA agreement, so say, for example, playing paranoia here, if the JPA agreement never gets approved, this cost-sharing agreement would provide a framework and it would no longer be interim. It would be how we divide the costs going forward.
It's titled interim.
Well, yes, it is interim pending a permanent decision as to how those costs will be. But if we did not come up with a JPA, I would look at that word as interim and say, it is what we have. It is interim until we change it and provide something else.
Yes, sir.
And I know there's been a lot of concern expressed about how the 5th entity would pay. But again, assuming this all comes in the direction it seems to be moving, comes to fruition, the JPA would authorize a pump charge, and that pump charge over time would accumulate enough funds to where there would be no financial burden on the city, any of the partners.
Over time. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, anybody in the audience want to talk to this? I don't see anybody on Zoom with a hand raised. You don't want to say anything, huh, Peter? Then we'll bring it back. What we're looking for now is just to give staff,
Yeah.
give the city manager authority to sign it.
I'll make a motion to allow city manager to approve.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona?
Yes.
Mayor Infante?
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Okay, we are at 9:30, and if I'm not mistaken, we need to have a joint agreement that we can extend this meeting beyond 9:30.
I'll make a motion, we extend the meeting beyond 9:30.
Second?
I'll second.
that.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
No.
Mayor Infante?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
It's his motion. He's just like screwing with it. It's no big deal. Okay, I believe we're in 6D. Would you please introduce that item, Madam Clerk?
Discussion and possible action to provide direction to staff regarding a TOT ballot measure for the November 2024 general election.
Staff report.
So as we all know, a 1 cent sales tax Measure U was approved by Solvang voters last November. It was projected to add about $1.2 million into the general fund, although current projections suggest the increase may be closer to 1.5 million due to inflationary factors, along with the recent 30% increase in our law enforcement contract. Staff expects any budgetary relief provided by the additional funding to be short-lived. Consequently, staff is looking for council direction regarding placing a TOT, transient occupancy tax measure, on next year's general election, 2024. So if council directs staff to proceed, we intend to retain the team that did the research and aided in the passage of Measure U. And although the contract amounts for those contractors are within the city manager's spending authority, we are requesting council direction prior to proceeding. And as a fiscal note, the combined cost of that team, Godby Research and Catherine Liu, should not exceed $75,000.
$75,000.
Yeah.
Can we vote now?
Almost free.
Almost free.
Okay, are we looking, I'm sorry, questions from the council? Anybody else?
Consultant, will the consulting assess and analyze what this would be? What's the impact? Compare us to other cities? Is that, and write a ballot measure if we wanted to proceed? Is that the scope?
So what what the Lou Edwards group does, along with Godby Research, is they provide the polling data, they provide the setup, the educational process, the messaging, and informational campaigns that the city can pursue. Once it's qualified for the ballot, the city is restricted on what it can and cannot do to expend public funds to support the measure. We've gone through this a little bit with them before, and they're very good at providing kind of the guardrails on it. I also contributed to that process the last time we did this, but they provide the granular information fundamentally as to whether they think the measure will pass or not. So if they come in and they do the polling and they've got a 51% approval rate on it and the margin of error is 4%, it's a toss-up. But I believe the last one was pretty close to spot on. Their estimates of the response were pretty close to what it ended up being in the final.
That's great.
Yeah.
But does that also include any economic analysis, the rate study? Or I think there was one done a few years back.
We're just talking about an increase in the TOT. So as far as the rate study, they're not going to provide that kind of information. They're more for the background research as to whether or not a measure like that would be successful. Ultimately, they could provide A/B analyses as to whether or not a special tax that would support a particular use would be effective and likable by the voters, or whether a general tax. In most instances, special taxes, because they have a higher supermajority requirement to pass, are very difficult to get passed. General taxes, such as an increase in TOT, much more easy to get those passed. But they're not going to provide any background information on what the city can use the money for, what the city should use the money for. They can provide a little bit of information about what the anticipated revenue recovery would be should it pass, but that's going to be more based on what staff will be analyzing. They're not doing the background research on that.
Randy?
They also will look at what the tolerance or what the threshold might be for any increase. I mean, the polling, they do ask questions. Would you support 0.5%, 1%, whatever? And they'll find out where that kind of that magic number is that gets you the highest.
That was my question.
Number with the highest positive.
What's the current rate?
Response. I'm sorry?
12%.
Currently 12, yeah.
Okay.
Is it the same as Buellton?
Yes.
Same as Buellton.
But isn't Buellton looking at raising theirs as well?
I had conversation with the city manager and the mayor, and there was an interest.
I think it'd be pretty important to stay coordinated if they were interested in pursuing a ballot measure as well. It doesn't make sense for us to create a low tolerance for Solvang and have our visitors, go 2 miles away for a hotel room. I think there's I don't know what kind of sensitivity, but that's the kind of analysis we would want to know.
I will say this, it would be extremely difficult to determine those metrics without going to a granular level of determining where each of the visitors are coming from over an extended period of time, and that's very cyclical. There are some times of the year where visitors to Solvang will be international. They're not going to be looking at moving to Buellton because there's a 2% differential in the TOT, but there may be some people who decide, oh, I'm only going to stay 2 nights instead of 3 nights because of this. But the data that I've seen tends to support the idea that people do not change their traveling habits based on the transient occupancy tax. It's more affected by rate, room rate, and activities that are available in the community.
Maybe we do a handshake with the chamber and see if we can get an assessment how much or if rates have gone up and when they went up in Solvang, just to, again, test tolerance.
Well, we're partners with SYV.
Yeah.
Visit SYV, yeah.
Visit SYV. I mean, would they support this? And if so, would they fund this $75,000?
No.
Something only we can do.
That's only something we can do, because what they are charging, what they get their money from is a T-bid, a business improvement district tax of $3 a room. They have nothing out of TOT.
Okay. But they, as hotelers, they would have a influence, I would say.
They might share their opinion, but like you said, Tracy, I mean, the crew at Solvang Chamber could get an opinion as well. And then this is part of what the consultant would do.
Well, certainly if you decide to move forward with this and we engage the pollsters to figure out whether or not this would have tolerance, you're also going to have an opportunity for the measure to come back to you, and then the members of the public can provide you their input on whether or not to put it on the ballot, because you would have to take formal action to increase or at least pass an ordinance that would be submitted to the voters of increasing the TOT, and the public would have an opportunity at least 2 times to have that conversation with the council. The chamber could chime in at that point and say whether or not the hoteliers in the community would support such a thing. But until you know whether or not it has legs with the voters, the hoteliers are business operators. They're going to tell you what will benefit their business and benefit the community by extension. But the voters are going to tell you what you need to know is whether or not this is going to pass.
Randy.
And so the request tonight is to basically say, yes, for me, to go ahead and pursue the process, start the process using the consultants to make make that determination, and we would come back probably in about two months or so with what they find out, and then get direction on whether or not to proceed onto the ballot.
I guess I'm a little suspicious of this consulting company because of Measure U and the confusion that was created by virtue of 1% versus 1 cent. That was.
Oh, no, that wasn't them. That was the prior city manager.
All right.
She's
I just
the
wanna
one
make
that
sure
made
that-
the
I just wanna
1
make
cent
sure that wasn't-
comment.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that
That's where that
was-
miscommunication came from?
Yeah.
Okay, because it was in the,
That,
it was in.
No, it wasn't
the actual
them.
ballot aspect.
Confusion went all the way to the ballot, too.
it did, it was, that
Okay.
that
And then
was,
Yeah.
finally, from an economic perspective, 12%'s a lot, okay, for an item. And we get additional revenue as rates go up. So we share in that increase. So we're already getting additional capital. So when a hotelier moves his rate from $200 to $300 a night, we get $12 more of that increase. So we're already getting an increase as the rates go up. So this,
I believe that's why you were asking
there's
to get-
already revenue
That's why I want to know
built in
if
as far
rates
as
have- if
the,
rates have actually increased.
as far as
I don't-
the,
I don't
Yeah,
know if
have
we
they
know.
and how much?
I don't-
well,
I
I
don't know if
don't
we
know. We don't stay in the local hotels, so we don't know if the rates are
but
going up.
I'm just
But
saying that
it's fair.
the
It's a
number.
fair point. I think we need to assess it. And it sounds like if we go through this process, we're not committing, but we're assessing.
Right.
Well, but it's $75,000 to find out if we should move forward.
Yeah.
So,
And if I'm not mistaken, a 1-point increase to go to 13% would bring us in about 700,000 or 800,000 a year. The money person's going to come up. I don't know, that's kind of.
what's the average rate last year? What's the average rate this year?
I was also going to point out while they're looking at it up, as was pointed out, research generally indicates that people don't concern themselves as much about TOT. I know when I go to San Francisco, I think TOT there is 18%.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
you do
so, and
feel
I
it
just was
after-
at a
When
conference.
you pay the bill.
I was at a conference last week in Coronado, and the room rate, the discounted room rate was $219, but by the time the fees and everything were added, it was almost $300 a night. Now, 15 of that was parking, but there are all those T-bids and TOT
Yep.
and everything else, so.
As Councilmember Clark will tell you, when we went to the Cal Cities thing last year or something, and we stayed in Long Beach,
Right.
17% was the TOT, and then there was, I don't know, there was about 3 or 4 other add-ons, and yeah, it just went on and on and on. But anyway, I'm sorry, did you come up?
Last year, we received $6.3 million in TOT for 22-23.
What was it the year before? 6,027,000?
So it barely went up. Okay. So, before us, since I don't see anybody wanting to speak, what, do we have some hand raised? Is that Tracy?
Yes.
Tracy, what's your comments, please?
This was done the last time with Bealton in a joint together. Both of the city of Solvang and Bealton raised their rates at the same time jointly working together. And when they did it in Lompoc, they did it without a consultant working with the city businesses and the hotel association to make sure and explore Lompoc to make sure this was wanting to be done and that it would be accepted. And yes, the voters do it, but if you don't really have the support, it's not going to happen. And we're going to lose, as you all said, we may lose some housing. But yeah, people do look at that when they're looking at people staying overnight. You look at it after the fact, will you come back?
Yeah.
So I think it should be looked at a little bit more wisely of, that's $75,000 right now, just to say you're going to do it, and let's have some more conversation and maybe bring it back to the table.
Do you think that's so crazy idea? Would Buellton's partner and split this cost with us? If they're willing to take a look at it at the same time, why don't we see if they're willing to be efficient about it?
And share the cost?
Share the cost.
It won't be 75,000.
But it's different jurisdictions.
It is.
So would it give us
Different voters.
different voters?
It just increased the scope for the consultant. Might increase the cost, but we'd still pay half.
It's basically two projects, though.
It is.
And one is not going to be materially different than the other in terms of the methodology. The results may be very different, but the cost is not going to be what I would say is a cost-benefit analysis of blending them together. They're going to have to do the same 250 phone calls for each agency, and so I don't think you're going to get an economy of scale out
So
of
there's
that.
no cost, yeah.
That's my impression of the work that goes into it. If this were something where, you were talking about a county-wide effort, where each of the agencies were willing to contribute a portion, they may be able to do it on a county-wide type of thing, but I think it's just too difficult when you're talking about two separate public agencies.
Fair enough.
That's a shame. Okay, so, we've heard from the public. Well, it's back to us. Let's make do I have a motion to turn it over to Randy to hire this consultant?
I'll make that motion. I'll just remind everybody that all of our costs have increased this year, and we still have an unknown cost increase with the sheriff contract, which is one of our biggest expenditures.
Yeah, it's huge.
And, new revenue sources for our city, we just don't have that much expansion beyond what we do already. And I might even contrast the way Buellton's business is set up is, they have a lot of new businesses coming in. Not that everyone's favoring all of them, but we don't have that kind of flexibility. And so the very, very few options we do have are sales tax and TOT. So I'll make a motion to direct the staff to proceed with hiring a consultant to assess this.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. Roll call, please. Yeah. We need a motion, don't we, on the direction to you to go this, or do we not?
Well, it's direction to go ahead and proceed. We're ultimately going to have to bring back a contract with whether for agency.
Well, I won't need a contract because it's less than 100,000.
Okay, then it's just direction to proceed.
In that case, is there anybody that objects to the direction to proceed?
I do. Well, yeah, I guess I like the idea of putting it out to the voters and it's their decision, but I'm concerned about the cost associated with getting to that point.
$75,000 is huge.
So, we're deciding whether or not we should give them the choice, quite honestly. So this will be a sunk cost regardless of how we move forward. And so I don't know if there's opportunity to negotiate that or a different company or whatever.
That's a not to exceed amount. I mean, the one vendor said it's, I think, $6,000 a month. I assumed 6 months, but if it's less, then it'll be less than that. So, that was an approximation that should not exceed that amount, but it probably will be less.
So, do you agree to have him contract with them? I know you had a concern. He said no.
I just have a concern about it. It's interesting, I want them to be able to decide, but now this is not an endorsement for this particular.
No, understood.
It's exploratory.
It's exploratory.
Assessment.
But it is a sunk cost, you're right.
It is.
Okay.
I'd be for it. It's in the best interest of Solvang. to do it.
Okay, so we got 4 out of 5 that are for it, I believe.
Okay.
So please proceed.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 6E. Madam Clerk, if you'd read that to the record.
Discussion and possible action regarding adopting Resolution Number 231236, adopting a remote public comment and Zoom bombing policy.
Staff?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you're all aware, the last two meetings, the city was Zoom bombed. I don't think I need to go into great detail as to what that means, but the council did ask us to come back with some potential alternatives and procedures to deal with potential Zoom bombs in the future. And I'll point out that I keep looking at the screen to see if anyone has joined us in this meeting. It does not appear they have. It doesn't mean they won't in the future. So in trying to be proactive and allow the continuing option for Zoom participation from the public, we've put together a draft remote public comment and Zoom bombing policy. Basically, it just sets up some of the guardrails that the council can use to cut off people who would bring forth speech that's not within the city's subject matter jurisdiction or something that would otherwise be problematic, while at the same time being consistent with the First Amendment. First Amendment is a cherished right of all Americans and those who live in the country, and we're not trying to squash that in any way, shape, or form, but we do want to make sure that this is a business meeting of a corporation, of a governmental agency, and the business meetings can be disrupted if they're not managed orderly. So the policy before you, I won't go through it in any great detail, but I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at it. We've gone ahead and put in some of the procedures that the mayor would go through as far as muting the speaker and how to eject a speaker from Zoom if they continued in that situation. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to comments. The one thing I did want to mention, though, is I did provide a spreadsheet to you showing what other cities have been doing with this. This came from the city clerk's listserv. You'll notice that all of the ones in red are discontinuing Zoom comments. They just decided that they didn't want to thread that needle. They're continuing to allow public comment in the council chambers, of course, but they just decided that continuing the Zoom option was not tenable. So it's not a scientific analysis. It's more just kind of a sampling of the cities that responded to the poll. And it's pretty good cross-section throughout the state, but it gives you an idea of what other cities are doing.
Comments, questions?
Well, question on that point, Dave. Did all of these cities that land on this list have a Zoom bomb incident?
I don't know that they all did. I did participate in a Cal Cities webinar last week, I believe. I think Randy was on there as well. There were over 150 participants from around California, and over 50% of the cities on that call had been Zoom bombed. So it is a continuing problem. I don't think it's temporal. I think it's cyclical. There were quite a few that occurred right at the beginning of COVID when a lot of agencies went to remote access to their city council meetings. But I would anticipate that in the future there will be some more. The city clerk is pointing out something that I cannot see without zooming on my screen. It does say date of incident on the
Okay,
spreadsheet,
good.
so it'll give you an idea.
She's
of-
got the best eyes of all of us.
She's
I
got
couldn't
very
see
good
that
eyes.
either.
And I can see now that I've zoomed it a little bit, it does say not applicable. So some of those cities didn't have a Zoom bomb, some of them did, and the date is set forth there for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Public comment. I don't see anybody on Zoom.
See, we're in the clear.
Nobody in the audience. Come on, Dennis. All right, we'll bring it back.
I just have one comment, and everything looks great, guys, and thank you for doing all this. There was one step where the mayor would warn a bomber before their exit, and I just don't necessarily feel that that's needed. I think we know, right, when we have you guys have already shown us how quickly you can do it, and we know who they are, and we know, because we're a small city, I think we know when they're public and they're coming for a real comment that we need to hear. So I'm not sure we need that extra step. That's just my 2 cents, and we don't need to change things. I think we just need to be expeditious.
Just put the rules up there on the instructions to log into the meeting. They break them, they're done, no warning.
I think
feel that way.
I think from a constitutional standpoint and a defensibility standpoint, that's the reason we put in the warning, because if they're not warned or they don't have an opportunity to cure whatever it is they're doing, then it makes it look like we are making advanced determinations of what their speech is going to be about. It's prior restraint. Those are disfavored under the First Amendment. So if they start out and they're spouting something, and the mayor says, "You're warned," and they do it again, then they're just gone. It's just that quickly.
Oh, maybe.
You're- Well, okay, so he can say you're warned, and then we can drop him.
Yes, if they continue that process, yeah, absolutely. And technologically, I talked with Laser at the last meeting, and I talked with, I'm sorry, I forgot Adam about it before, that we've got the ability to be very quick about it. And the proposal is to just mute them when that's happening, without having the mayor say, "Would you please mute them while I make my warning?" Just mute them right away. The mayor says, "Okay, you're warned." Go ahead and flip it back on. They start it, they're gone, just like that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because we don't know in advance, other than kind of the screen names that we see on the screen, whether or not someone is going to have a legitimate public comment until they start speaking. With some of them, we had some advance warning just based on the names that they used in other agencies to show up on there. Henry Himmler was one of them. Pretty evident that that's probably not someone who's going to be making a comment about the
Housing.
the housing, pickleball courts.
Pickleball courts.
But we can't always presuppose that, and we want to make sure that we are consistent with the First Amendment by allowing people who do have legitimate issues, even if we may not agree with them, the legitimate issues, to speak and provide that comment to the council. So it's kind of a tightrope at times, but we're trying to provide the council with the tools to stop the ones who are clearly outside the pale.
So at the end of this, may I have a motion to accept?
Move to approve item 6E.
Adopt the resolution.
Adopt the
number
resolution.
23, 1236.
A second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first. Was that you?
That was
sir?
me, yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. We're down to AB 1234 reports and council closing comments. Any of those?
Yeah, I will shout out, thank you, staff, for getting the tree lights back as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. One goofy comment. I was talking to Lieutenant Valencia, and he said that Buellton is looking into putting cameras in the downtown area that the sheriff's department can access remotely. Do you have any idea what that's going to cost them?
A lot.
A lot. I looked it up. It's about $15,000 a camera.
Yeah, it's crazy because then you also have to have the remote monitoring and recording. It's not an inexpensive process. My intent is to bring it back as an option during the budget process
Okay.
in the spring.
Particularly if we've already got some information what Buellton has done.
Right.
That would give us a good.
2019 didn't fly.
Did you just squirt yourself in the face? All right. In that case, if there's no other comments, we are now adjourned at, look at that, 9:58. We got done before Tuesday. Yeah, we did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Record.
It's not like. You're welcome. The next meeting are basically all Chelsea's items, so she volunteered to handle them.
Oh, awesome. Good night on.
I like the idea.